My girlfriend broke my PS4 and doesn't understand why I'm so upset. I don't really know where to go from here. This was written back in COVID times, December 15th, 2020. So, some background. During quarantine, I've been playing my PS4 games a lot more. What a loser, by the way. Imagine playing games in quarantine. I definitely didn't play for about 8 hours every single day. Anyway, I was able to finish up some stories and complete some big games in my free time the last few months. It was a great escape for me. My girlfriend, Liz, never got it fully, but understood I liked playing it and it made me happy. I told her that I was really looking forward to the PS5 and was hoping to get one soon. I missed out on the pre-order and initial shipping wave, so I got a bit sad for a while, but knew I would eventually get one when the craze settled down, whether it was next year or the year after. Her friend, Kat, also knew of this because her boyfriend was looking forward to the new Xbox. This is what happened today. This is when stuff got bad. I was playing FF7 Remake, finishing up some last achievements, when Liz came into the room with Kat. I said, "Hey babe, how was your day?" And without warning, she pulled the PS4 out of the wall and smashed it on the ground. She then took a hammer and smashed whatever pieces were left. This happened within 20 to 30 seconds. I just looked at her, shocked. I asked, "What happened? Why did you do that? Did I do something to make you mad?" This was when I noticed Kat was recording everything with her phone. Liz walks away and then comes back and shows me a PS5 box. I still don't react, and she says, "Merry early Christmas." I just walk out of the room and go to the bedroom and lock the door. This was December 15th, okay. Liz comes knocking an hour later and asks, "What's wrong? I thought you wanted the PS5. I told her I couldn't even think about that because she literally just destroyed a part of my life that I've created over the last 5 years. I explained to her that she just ruined hundreds of hours of gameplay and saves that I'd built up. Liz just said, "Well, can't you just do it again?" Sounds like my parents when they used to tell me, "Can't you just pause the game?" "No, mum. I'm in the final circle and I've got 2 rats so I need to kill." This is when I walked out and left the apartment. I came back a couple of hours later with Kat and Liz now both showing off the PS5 to me. Kat says, "Look, Liz worked really hard to get you this. We just wanted to make you happy." I asked Kat why she was recording. She says that some person on TikTok or Instagram did the same thing to their boyfriend and they were happy. Apparently that's where they got the idea from. A girlfriend came in and broke the PS4, then gave them a PS5 and everyone cheered or something. I still can't believe it. They wanted to make a video in that spirit with me as the guy. I told Kat a lot of my life was in that PS4 and now it's all gone. Side note, yes, I know I should have backed up on the cloud. I did for some of my games, but a lot of them I just kept on the PS4. I had hundreds of hours from The Witcher 3, Kingdom Hearts games, FF7 Remake, Final Fantasy 15, God of War, The Last of Us, Resident Evil, Devil May Cry games. Many of these titles were fully completed or close to that point. Most of them are now lost. Now Kat is calling me ungrateful, and her boyfriend liked the Xbox she gave him. I asked her if she destroyed his old Xbox. She said no, and that she just gave it to him gift wrap last week. I asked why I wasn't given the same treatment, and it was because they saw the video yesterday and got the idea to recreate it. I told Liz I do appreciate the gift, but that she needs to know she broke a part of me that has been built over the years. It sounds stupid, but I was really proud of my collection. Liz then says, "Well, why can't you just do it on the new PlayStation?" I told her I could, but it would take a lot of time and effort that I may not want to put in again. She just brushed it off and said, "Well, you can play your new games anyway. They're probably better." At this point, I left and went to a friend's house where I'm writing this now late at night. I really don't care about the PS5, and I'm mad that a freaking viral video made this all happen. What the F is wrong with people where they think destroying someone's personal property is funny? They tried showing me the video, but I'm not watching that trash. Liz and I have had a great relationship to this point. We've been together for 4 years, and this is the only major issue that has come up. Some might think it's just a video game or that I can get past this, but I don't know if I can. It wasn't just that she did it, it was the fact that after it, she didn't seem to know why or care to know why I'm so upset. I've never had this feeling before, and I really don't know how to proceed here. This is a tough one, because I'm sure there are people listening and watching right now that, along with Liz, are probably like, well, it doesn't really make any sense. Yeah, your old PlayStation's been destroyed, but you've got a new one. Like, you know, if you had an old car and someone bought you a new one, You wouldn't care if they destroyed your old car. Probably not the best example, but something along those lines. But it's different with this, isn't it? Like, this guy has clearly put so many hours into these games. And the difference is, when you go from an old console to a new console, that old console still has value, like personal value to you. There's a very good chance that OP may, despite the fact that he's got a new PS5, go back and play old PlayStation games and old saves that he loved on the console that he put 5 years into. I get it sounds strange, but you know, if you've ever played games or you're a gamer, you'd understand. I mean, it's not even that. It's the same with anything. Like, say you knitted a jumper and you spent ages on it, and then somebody bought you a new jumper or a new set of yarn or whatever that was much better quality, new, etc., and said, look, you can make a new jumper with this new yarn. I mean, this is a terrible example, but you know what I'm saying. By the way, I've burnt your old jumper. You'd be like, great, well, I love that old jumper. I spent years making it. Now, if you spent years making a jumper, you'd probably be quite bad at making jumpers in general. So not quite sure if that works out, but you get the general idea. You wouldn't be happy, and you'd have one jumper fewer. So depending on the time of the year, you might be a bit cold. Say if it was in winter. Something to think about. Anyway, let's get into the update. This came after Christmas Day, December 29th. Well, it's been a hellish couple of weeks. First of all, I appreciate all the support. I didn't get to respond to many people because my life has been a whirlwind the last couple of weeks. I took a lot of time thinking and talking with friends and family about what's happened and where to go from here. I tried saving the hard drive from the PS4 through my buddy who was more tech savvy than I. We had no luck in that regard. All that stuff is lost forever. The PS5 has been at our place since the incident, but I have no interest in that right now. I didn't go back to the apartment for a week. I finally told Liz we needed to sit down and have a discussion about everything. It was a long conversation with a lot of tears on both ends. I won't go into exact details, but I explained to her how her actions affected me. The comparison some told me to tell her about me smashing her phone or laptop in the same manner really hit her. That is a much better comparison that I should have thought of. In that moment, she understood, I think. I once again asked why she recorded it. Yeah, that's the thing, like, if you're going to record that to then put on TikTok, you're not really thinking about your boyfriend, are you? She said she wanted to capture the moment of my happiness. It wasn't about Instagram or TikTok clout or whatever. Okay. She thought I'd be ecstatic and wanted to have that moment captured forever. I told her I understood that. Okay, fair enough. Finally, I told her the truth. I told her I couldn't trust her anymore after this. She destroyed something dear to me. I broke up with her. Maybe it's irrational. Maybe I'm overreacting. I think after the conversation with my parents and friends and her, I realized that I can't love someone who doesn't empathize with me enough to know that breaking that PS4 was a bad move. The incident should have never happened if she knew how much I cared for this, especially during a year as rough as this. I told her that I'm moving out of the apartment to live with my parents for a bit. I said that I'm breaking the lease in March, so she has until then to find a new place. She was upset, but I stood my ground. So I spent Christmas with my parents, and while a little sad, I think it's for the best. She's tried to reach out, but I told her unless it was about stuff about the apartment, then I don't want to talk to her right now. As for me, I think I'm done with gaming. I'll find something else to keep my interest. I didn't take the PS5. It'll be really hard for me to find my joy in it after all of this. I thought I'd marry Liz. We were college sweethearts and we were happy. Now everything is broken, just like my PS4. Hard not to laugh at that, sorry. And so I'd rather not be reminded of that anymore. For now, I'm just going to be alone for a while and figure things out. I believe that everything will work out in the end as long as I keep myself honest and hardworking. Happy holidays. Oh my goodness, I'm just looking in the comments and somebody's actually, sorry, I've got to go give myself, sorry, I can't even speak. I've got to give myself some credit here. Look at this. I'm an avid knitter. Imagine if my partner would cut up all of my current projects right in front of me, then pulled out a bag of expensive cashmere yarn, expecting me to be happy about losing hundreds of hours worth of work, and just telling me to do it again with this yarn. Sorry, is that not exactly what I just said? And I know nothing about knitting. A little bit of respect for me in the comments, by the way. What an analogy, I should never have doubted myself. But yeah, there we go. That is it for that story. I do have to say, I'm not sure if this warrants breaking up with somebody. I know the comments are going to be against that thought, but I just don't know if it's like, if you've got like a really good relationship like you say you do, and you've had no major issues in 4 years, and you thought you were going to marry this person, it does seem to me as if she is genuinely sorry. Like, yes, she obviously should have realized, she should have understood, she should have not done any of this. Like, you shouldn't have to explain to her why what she's done is so ridiculous. But if it's just one incident, like, there are much worse incidents that happen to people and they get through it and stay together and live a happy life. So I just feel like, is it worth like destroying a 4-year relationship with someone that outside of this you love that much? I don't know. A couple of questions. So, were you living together in COVID? Yes. You've said during quarantine you were playing your PlayStation a lot more. You've been playing it for 5 years, so that means it's been in your life as long as Liz has been in your life. And I'm sure, like, it's obvious that she would know how much it means to you. It's impossible for her not to know that after being with you and it being in your life for that long and clearly being a big part of your life. You say at the start that she never got it fully, but she understood that you liked playing it and it made you happy. So maybe that is all I need to read. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think about what I'm saying. I just feel like it's so hard to find somebody that you really love and want to spend like loads of time with, ideally your life with. Is it worth sacrificing this person just because they did this one thing? It's hard to know because, you know, we don't know the nuance and we don't really know how sorry she is. But it sounds to me as if she's pretty sorry. I wouldn't do it again. She understands. She just probably got led by a cat a little bit. I mean, look, I'm not passing the blame at all. She did what she did. It's on her. But 4-year relationship for this, I don't think it's worth it. I really don't. I mean, she has said some really stupid stuff like, can't you just do it all again? Like, I've got a new one for you, it's fine. Clearly she just doesn't understand though. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on this. Surely it's worth trying to build that trust up again and seeing if you could do that before just breaking up in a matter of days. But anyway, I'll leave that one up to you in the comments down below, because I genuinely don't think this is worth breaking up over, even though it's a huge deal and probably bigger than I realise and lots of you listening to this realise as well. Too OP. My husband of 6 years wants to be the father of another woman's child. And I know what you're thinking. How on earth does that work? Yeah, great question. Okay, we're going way back to September the 16th, 2015 for this one. So, my husband unleashes this on me 3 days ago and I'm still reeling. This woman is 26, by the way, and her husband is 30. We're talking over dinner, and he mentions that a longtime friend of his wants to have a baby. I don't know this woman personally, but he's talked about her before. Apparently, she asked him to be the sperm donor, and he said he was very flattered, and he wanted to do it. At first, I was really surprised, but not necessarily upset. Even though I didn't find the idea palatable, I didn't want to jump to the wrong conclusions, so I told him to explain a little more about what this meant. He tells me she's wanted a kid for a while, and she's decided not to wait for a relationship anymore. First question, how old is this woman? I would love to know. I asked him if it would be difficult for him to know that somewhere out there, he had a child that he couldn't see or whose life he couldn't be a part of, and if that would affect him emotionally. Then he whips out some really upsetting news. This woman actually wants him to be the father figure. She wants him to be a part of the kid's life, like the actual dad. I do not like this for one major reason. He's been intimate with this woman before. Oh my goodness me. You know what? I was actually thinking, yeah, this is weird. I would not like this if my partner wanted to do this. But okay, maybe he's really helping out a friend who's in desperate need and she wants somebody she can trust. But my goodness me. He's been intimate with her before and she wants him to be the dad. Just no, immediately. I don't even need to carry on reading, just no. They dated in their early 20s, but he refers to her as a friend, and before now, I never minded their friendship. I assume they didn't think of each other that way anymore. They still might not, to be fair, but isn't it very freaking intimate to share the active parenting of a child? I just don't know if they'd keep it platonic, considering their history and this very bond-building event they want to plan. He said I'm overreacting and that I'm not showing trust in him. I'm being insecure, and it's insulting because he's always been loyal to me before, and I have no reason not to trust him. Which is true, but it's just so uncomfortable for me to consider. I would also say it's uncomfortable anyway, knowing that your husband is friends with somebody that he's been intimate with before and has actually like dated and that you sort of know of. Like, that just wouldn't sit right with me anyway. That's just, I know you can be friends with exes, but it's just not, I don't like, it doesn't, I wouldn't like that personally. Let me know in the comments, by the way, what you think about that, because I know that's a bit of a divisive topic. There's another issue too. He and I have talked about children, and I let him know fairly early in our relationship, right when we started getting serious, that I have some fertility issues that may make it difficult to have kids in the future. I let him know that I've never gotten a specialist opinion and that nothing was certain, but I've been told it may be a concern in the future. It wasn't something in the forefront of my mind. We'd both agreed, I thought, to put off planning a family for a few years. So to me it was a distant issue, one that I thought I'd just deal with later, when we were trying. He goes on to tell me he and this woman have been discussing this for a few days, and he's going to do it because I might not be able to have his kids anyway, and if it turns out I can't, he wants to seize this opportunity because he might not get another one like this later. This gets worse and worse with every paragraph. That is horrific. I feel hurt. My emotional reaction is that I'm somehow inadequate, even though we haven't even started trying for kids, and I haven't even gotten a specialist opinion. I feel written off. I feel shocked. I'm very freaking upset. But deep down, I wonder, what if I can't have kids? Is it fair to deny him parenthood? Am I looking at this the wrong way? Truthfully, he has always been faithful. Could this dynamic somehow function properly in a way I'm not seeing? I'm so weirded out right now. I wouldn't even know how to picture this future. Let me answer your question. No. Like, obviously not. This would never work out. It's absolutely insane. It doesn't make any sense what he's saying either. Yeah, fair enough. Having kids to people, some people, is super important. Me included. It is like a massive thing that I've always known I want to have. I want to have a family. So it's a big deal in any relationship I'm in. And of course, like, fertility issues both ways are something that you do have to think about. However, he is saying it's like an insurance policy for him now, rather than trying with you first and then later on deciding if he wants to do something with somebody else at another time. You can't do that. You can't say, well, I'm going to have a child now just in case we can't have one in the future. That is like ridiculous. And it also shows that he wants to have an active part in his kid's life because he's treating this child as his own rather than just being a sperm donor. I mean, I think about my uncle a little bit in this story. He was with my ex-aunt, I suppose, for years, and she never wanted to have kids. He always did. And he was, in theory, fine with not having kids because he wanted to be with her. Later on, I think, well, it didn't work out for whatever reason. Now he has 2 twins who are great. But what if he'd been like, you know what? I know you don't want to have kids, so I'm going to donate sperm to a woman I know who I used to be intimate with, and then be an active dad to my kid, to her kid, just in case we don't have kids ever. Like, what is that? We have an argument. He tells me I'm being selfish because he's always wanted children, and I cannot expect him to give up such a huge dream of his. He says he isn't cheating with this other woman. They aren't going to have sex. He claims it'll be like he just has a kid he can father, and the kid will just live with a friend. He says it really has nothing to do with our relationship. It's his own personal matter, and I wouldn't have to do anything. Yeah, that's how you treat your girlfriend, by saying, no, the kid I'm going to have has nothing to do with us. Class. I think that's really how he views it. Like when one person in a marriage has a time-consuming, expensive hobby that the other doesn't enjoy, but still allows their partner to do, even though it means giving up time and resources. But this is a child, not a sailboat. What a quote. This is a woman he's dated and slept with, even if it was years ago, and that's what's off-putting to me. I honestly have never been in this position, so I don't know if I'm just freaking out. I don't know if people commonly do things like this, or how these things turn out, or how I'm supposed to approach this. A child would be a huge part of his life that I apparently will have no part in. Can someone reality check this, please? How do I even proceed with this? It's obvious to me. You just say no. Like, what on earth is he doing? Let's see what the comment said though. And remember guys, there is an update to come in this. Somebody said, nope, nope, nope. Not selfish, perfectly reasonable. What a can of worms this is going to open up. Someone else said, oh heck freaking no. It's not a hobby, it's a child, a living, breathing human being who has needs. Like a father. He can't treat the child like a puppy or a hobby, it'll be his kid. All of your objections are absolutely correct. They will have a relationship that you don't share in. There will be a degree of intimacy between them. He'll be financially bound to her. Hello, child support. This will absolutely involve you. Every single thing you two do will be tinged with his child. Every vacation, every holiday, heck, every weekend. Now, I'm not 100% sure on that because if you are a sperm donor, surely you don't have to pay child support. But given how this relationship is almost definitely going to work, then he will be active in his own child's life and therefore will be spending money on his child. So yeah, fair enough. Basically, he wants the little family unit with her and not you for some reason. For me, just the fact that he entertained this notion would be grounds for we are going to therapy now, and if you ever so much as speak to this woman again, we are breaking up. If he argues, or worse, actually has sex with her or donates sperm, I'd be filing divorce papers in his face an hour later. I forgot they're married as well. Of course, they're not just boyfriend and girlfriend, they're married. Okay, so 11 days later, we got this update. Well, everyone was right. He was cheating. Surprise, surprise. That didn't even cross my mind, but yeah, now that OP has said that, that seems so obvious. Yeah, of course he was cheating. I called the girl behind his back and I found out everything. She wasn't nice about it. It wasn't a fun conversation. There's nothing else I can say except I'm out of there, and divorce is happening. We dated 3 years, married 3 years, and I'm a stupid idiot and I can't believe I didn't see it before. It makes me cringe to look at my post. How naive could you be? Somebody commented, don't beat yourself up, OP. When you love someone, you're inclined to see the best in them. That's why it's hard for virtually anyone inside a relationship to believe their partner could be cheating on them. Our mind wants to believe that our partners are fundamentally good people, so we tend to find ways to excuse behavior that seems suspect to an outsider. It's why it's always a good idea to talk to others when you have a gut feeling something is wrong. In any event, I'm sorry for your loss. Hopefully you're working to move past this and will eventually open yourself up to loving and trusting someone again. A very good point that this commenter makes, to be fair. And it's something that I think I'm learning to do. I have done it before, but when you ask someone close to you who's like not involved, like a good friend or a parent or anyone, about their opinion of something, and they tell you something that you don't want to hear, my reaction to that has always been, oh, well, no, they're wrong. They just don't get it. But then after the fact, when everything's calmed down, you're like, no, they were actually right. So I'm learning to, like, if I get those opinions, see them for what they are in the moment and really like take them in properly. And yeah, I mean, if Opie had asked any of her friends or parents, they would have said the same thing as these comments, right? Like, this is just not on. It's hard when you're actually in the moment to realize that, but it's so obvious from the outside in. Finally, somebody asked, so is she pregnant? OP replied, no, but apparently it wasn't for lack of trying. She was pretty up in my face about it. It was probably the worst conversation of my life. I can honestly say I've never seen red until she started laughing at me. Oh, whatever. They can have each other. F them. Okay, so all this time, this guy was just coming up with this stupid ruse to try and allow for his cheating. That was it. It wasn't being nice to a friend. It wasn't insurance of having a kid in the future, which is, by the way, like the most ridiculous lie ever. It was just, I'm cheating on you and I want to keep cheating on you and ultimately probably leave you down the line. Well done, that man. My husband has been giving advice to a coworker about how to make his gay son straight behind his wife's back. This was originally posted on June the 22nd, 2021. I want to preface this by saying that I don't know how my husband is when he's at work. He works an office job, and I work in a daycare as a receptionist, and we also recently purchased our first home. However, everything I learned came from an email from the co-worker's wife that included evidence of conversations between my husband and her husband in regards to their son. Louise and Edward, we'll call them that, recently had their son come out. And from Louise's email and the messages she provided between her husband and mine, she has been supportive, while her husband pretended, in her words, to be, but instead has asked my husband for advice while at work and expressed how he isn't comfortable about it. And my husband has supposedly been trying to comfort him and give him advice on how to fix him despite his wife. The messages she sent me showed them talking about it and ideas to talk to him one-on-one without the wife, along with how they're trying to get together sometime outside of work to discuss it over dinner or something.
I never knew my husband felt this way before this situation, but I was able to call Louise and apologise and try to comfort her to the best of my ability, although not knowing her well, and she feels incredibly hurt and lied to by all of this, and I want to help her to the best of my ability, as well as her son if possible, in any way. She said that she hasn't talked to her husband yet, but that she's considered talking to him with one of her parents since she doesn't think she can do it by herself. And I told her that I'm disgusted with my husband, just like she was, but from a different perspective of not having kids yet and not wanting to have kids with someone who thinks like this. First of all, comment down below, guys. What do you reckon? Who is worse here? This woman's husband, who is secretly not very comfortable about the fact that his son is gay and is asking for advice, or OP's husband, who is saying, don't worry, it's alright, we can fix him? I'm pretty sure it's the latter. I mean, they're both not great, but the latter, wow. Back to it. As of right now, I'm still trying to digest all of this emotionally, but I can't express just how angry I am at my husband, and I don't want to be with him anymore because of it. Yeah, that's absolutely fair enough. However, outside of my selfish ambitions, she told me everything yesterday, and I'm yet to confront my husband because Louise said that she's not sure how she wants to go about it yet. And despite it being hard for me not to bring it up, I don't want to jeopardize her in any way and make things harder, since this is about her safety and her son first and foremost, and whatever she feels best to do in her timing. But before I do anything, I want to ask what I should do and when with everything she provided on my end to support her. I'm strongly considering divorce, since I don't want kids with someone who thinks like this, but I first most want to help her and support her in her timing. But she doesn't know what she wants to do yet, and to be honest, it's kind of hard to sit on everything she told me and not confront him. But just thinking about her safety and her son's keeps me grounded, and I just want advice on what to do here moving forward. A quick edit here as well. In the messages between my husband and Edward that she showed me, my husband said that if it were his son, he'd, quote, set him straight, and mentioned punishing him by taking away privileges and not taking him to sports until he changes his mind, along with suggesting that they go to dinner to talk about it outside of work, and about Edward's wife too, since he wasn't thrilled with how open she was to it. Wow. I mean, yeah, like, you just gotta divorce him for that. If you're gonna have kids, and this is a really important thing to you, I mean, even if you're not gonna have kids, like, it's just such a horrible way of thinking that I would just divorce anyway. But imagine you have a son or a daughter, and your husband's like, actually, I don't really want them to be gay. And then when they come out, if they are gay, because I feel like this husband would have a problem with any child of his that wasn't straight, no matter what they were. I think at that point you'd be like, well, I don't want this guy to be my kid's father. So therefore, if you're going to have kids, you've got to divorce him. Okay, now 2 weeks later, we got the following update. When I wrote my last post, I was struggling with how I should tell my husband without putting Louise or her son in danger, since Louise said that she was afraid to tell Edward because of his tendency to get upset over meaningless things, and she was scared of how he could react. I was concerned that if I talked to my husband, he would send Edward a text that could completely blindside Louise. But since my last post, I spoke to Louise again. That's a good point. I forgot about that. Yeah, it's a tough spot for you, but I think you were right. You had to let Louise do whatever she was going to do first, and only then, for the safety of her and her child, could you then confront your husband. I think that's the right way of doing things, but I agree with you. Like, very hard to sit on that information and be like, well, I know my husband's homophobic, but I just have to pretend that everything's normal. Anyway, I told her that it was hard to not address him with the news she told me, and she said that she had since spoken to her parents about it, and that it would be fine for me to address him since they would be helping her tell her husband alongside her. She also talked about how Edward pretended to be supportive, but that she felt hurt to know that he lied. I told her that I also felt lied to in a different sense, since my husband said that he would be fine with any orientation that our children could have when we talked about potential kids, only for him to be someone else completely at work. But still, I wanted to talk to him myself, since a part of me hoped that maybe it was just an act. But even if it was, I wouldn't know how to trust him and really know for sure. That did just cross my mind, and I had to sort of second guess myself a little bit there, because I was thinking, well, there's how you feel in real life, and then there's work chat with guys, but that's not the sort of thing that you'd like joke around with. And also, anything that you say with anyone, you have to actually mean it, I feel like. Like, just because you're around, maybe it's like a laddie culture or something. By the way, I'm not like saying this makes it all right. I'm just trying to understand what might have happened. Maybe it's a laddie culture at work, and then your husband's been like, oh, don't worry, we can fix him, as like a bit of a joke when he doesn't actually mean it. First of all, that makes no sense. Secondly, if you're saying that in the first place, then you mean it. Like, you wouldn't say that as a joke, really, would you? I'm trying to find some solace in this for OP and think maybe there's a way this has been taken out of context, but it's like a private conversation between two people at work. And even if it wasn't, and it was like funny or, I don't know, meant to be dark humor or something, it isn't funny, is it? So yeah, I think this is the end. When I spoke to him and showed the emails Louise sent, he didn't deny the messages that she included, but said that I was wrong to talk to her before him and that he never went through my things. And I thought about that hard. I could have talked to him first, but I chose to call Louise because I was afraid of him telling Edward and blindsiding Louise before she was ready. However, he said that wasn't an excuse and that we come first. But when I asked how he could say what he did in those messages and tell me that he was supportive of our potential children having a different orientation, he said that, quote, I'm probably not the woman he thought he married when I'm at work. What a disgusting statement that is. And that I'm being controlling by questioning his work behavior. And he said that he didn't know if he could trust me either, and that he wanted space between us for a bit. When I asked him straight up what he meant in the messages and his stance on it, he said that Louise was stupid to support him and that he's tired of how overblown gender topics are. He also said that the boy only did it because it was popular and that he probably doesn't get it and will regret it one day. Okay. By the way, just for the record, I didn't try and stand up for this guy with what I said before. I was just trying to find maybe like there was a way in which he'd been pushed into saying something he didn't really mean as a joke, trying to fit in with guys at work that aren't like him. No, I think we're past that point now. Wow. When I asked him what he meant by wanting space, he said he would inquire about staying with his brother, and I was considering staying with my parents before he said that. But as of right now, he's staying at his brother's, and I've been at my parents for the past couple of days, and they have been supportive and open to hearing me vent. Lately, I've been second-guessing myself a lot, and my dad says it's because my husband tried to shift the blame on me, along with how his real self came out when he wasn't around me. And mum said that he had a lack of character. I still want divorce because I still want to have children, but I don't feel like I can have it with him because trust is shattered. But I'm also afraid that I'll never get married again. But I'm not going to let that pressure me into staying. It's worth saying OP is 26 and her husband is only 28. That's like my age. I don't have a wife, so you'll be fine. I'm sure of it. I mean, like, the fact that you're already married at 26 is relatively early, I would suggest, in these days. I mean, depends where you are in the world, but in the Western world, 26 being married, pretty early, I would say. So don't worry, you've got like loads of time to find someone else. Like, your age is not a reason to stay with somebody ever. Let me make that abundantly clear. My husband, on the other hand, has turned to social media to talk about me being unfaithful, among other things that aren't true at all. And I feel like he's just trying to get out ahead of it. My parents are already helping me with a lawyer, but for the emotional stuff, how do I cope with the fear of never getting married again or being looked down on by other people or friends who don't know yet, along with the doubts that always creep in? You just have to think to yourself that these are inevitable and there's nothing you can do about it, but it's always going to happen. Like, I know I've just said what I've said, and logically, of course, it makes sense, but if you're actually in this situation, then yeah, like, you're fine to have these thoughts, but they will pass. And all that will happen is you'll probably be single for a couple of years maximum, then you'll find someone and you'll be like, wow, why on earth did I waste time on my ex? Like it's easy to say from the outside looking in. It just is what's going to happen. You're 26. Well, that is young. Younger than me. Okay, now let's get into the final update, which came a year later. July the 8th, 2022. The original post was June the 22nd, 2021. Again, like all these stories, I never really read ahead because I don't want it to get spoiled for me. I just sort of check that it looks good and is a good length for an episode. So I hope, like you guys probably do as well, that there's a good conclusion to this and that they have broken up and OP's found someone else. But let's see. A couple of months ago, I wrote about my husband who gave advice to a coworker behind his wife's back on how to make their gay son straight. I've since divorced him, but the kid has passed away. that sentence. I was like that, and then I was like that. That's shocking. Okay. I honestly wasn't sure if I wanted to come back and write this, but I'm not sure I could go without it too. The past couple of months have been a lot emotionally, but long story short, there was more going on at the time of my original post than I thought, and I think it's important to add. But before I do, I'll add some context from before. My ex-husband works an office job, and we never had kids together. A couple of months back, I received an email from the wife, Louise, of an employee that my husband worked with, and the email included messages between my husband and her husband, Edward, regarding her son, Jake, 14, who recently came out as gay. Louise was supportive of her son, but Edward vented to my husband at work while pretending to be supportive at home. However, he did more than just vent. My husband did more than blindly agree with him. He said that if it were his son, he'd punish him in ways that would challenge his decision by pulling him out of sports and limiting him to only girls' sports, along with removing friends until he got his act together. In addition to that, they also talked about Louise and how Edward was disappointed by her support for Jake, and my husband offered to go out to dinner to discuss Louise and fix him behind her back by talking to Jake away from her on various drives among other things, and he even recommended a father-son weekend away to work on him. They also used derogatory words in the messages that Louise shared, and after reading everything, I decided to confront my husband, but not before Louise was ready for the following reasons. Edward had cut off a lot of support from Louise's corner, and when we talked over the phone after the email she sent me, she said that she was yet to tell her parents for support, and I tried to put off on immediately confronting my husband in case he'd message Edward and blindside her before she was ready. It was hard to sit on it, and I did for a few days, but I figured it was easier for me to do that than risk putting them in danger before she was ready. But when I did confront my husband, after she got her parents involved and a plan, he was less than pleased. I told him about the email and the messages I saw too, along with how my husband once said he'd be fine with any orientation that our future children took, and he did not refuse that the messages were indeed his. However, he said I was wrong to talk to Louise before talking to him and that we come first. He also said his job was his personal space and that he didn't like me snooping around in it. Finally, he said that I'm probably not the woman he married when I'm at work, and in my last post I said that hurt the most. He also said Louise was stupid to support Jake because of how overblown gender topics and LGBTQ are, along with how Jake probably did it for attention and will regret it one day. After that conversation, he said he was going to stay at his brother's and I planned to stay elsewhere too. He didn't put up a fight and I went to stay with my parents, but that conversation was when I decided on divorce, and he eventually said that he wanted divorce too. So, what's happened since? I want to explain what I said at the top about how there was more going on at the time that I knew about, so I'll do it now. Edward had already enacted his plan of taking Jake to hang out and tried to convert him one-on-one before talking to my husband, and she only found out after coming across their messages a few weeks after he had already started, Louise, that is. He also told Jake to not tell her about it, but she had a hard time getting Jake to tell her everything that happened when they were alone, and that included a therapist who she got to talk to him along with private resources that would encourage him. However, the reason I'm returning to this is because Jake has passed away, and he passed while Louise and Edward were still in the stages of their divorce. I had the chance to meet with Louise in person, as well as her son once too, and she told me that her parents were fully on her side and assisting her in the divorce process. Edward wasn't thrilled that she emailed me their messages, but she had her parents there when she talked to him. She also said that she had a hard time telling Jake about the divorce, but I want to make the last part of this about him. Jake took his own life, and Louise said she felt responsible for his death and has been really hard on herself. She also said that she was never able to find out everything that happened between Jake and Edward when they were alone, and that goes for the therapist too. She is currently trying to investigate Edward with help from her parents and a lawyer. But in regards to Jake, I want to say this. I don't think I will ever be able to move on, and part of that is because I feel disgusted at myself for even associating with someone who played a part in this, in my ex-husband. It's been hard to do anything on some days since finding out, and I've even been prescribed prescriptions to help me lately as well. It's been even harder on Louise and her parents. But when I asked if there was anything I could do to potentially help remember him, she said that she wants to encourage others to keep fighting so that the same doesn't happen to others too. And that is what also made me want to write this. Not because it's something that will brighten up your day, but because it's something that you need to hear. She wants to ensure that this happens to no one else, regardless of their gender orientation. So, after some time, she's planning on getting involved in her community. Not just LGBTQ groups, but groups that help children in general. She doesn't know when, and she's still going through a lot, but she wants to really soon. As for whoever reads this, I won't tell you how to perceive it. I believe the strongest conviction comes from oneself and not what they're told. I just wanted to share how she's trying to move on, and she knows that I'm sharing this too. To everyone who commented, I can't tell you how much your words of comfort and advice have been received in the previous posts. Louise is now my friend, and I hope we'll be able to be friends for a long time. She's going through a lot, but I believe she'll come out stronger. Thank you to everyone who took the time to read this, and I truly wish you all nothing but the best. Okay, wow, there we go. That is the end of that one. As I said, and you'll know this if you listen and watch me a lot, I don't read ahead because I don't want to know what's happened, like you guys. Sometimes that leads to like great moments and great stories. Other times it leads to stories like this that are just deeply sad. But I think the only thing that we can do as readers and listeners of this post is just do what OP and Louise want us to do and never let this happen to anyone again. I genuinely felt like as I was reading that, I was getting a sort of, I felt roused in a way to ensure that this didn't happen again. I don't know if you guys felt that as well, but like it really does hit home when someone that's been through something like this wants to make sure, like, give their life to this not happening again, and wants people to talk about it, wants everyone to know what happened, etc., so that other people don't take their own lives. Yeah, just like horrible, really. A few themes there. I mean, obviously we have like the obvious one, but I also want to talk about like people who hide their moral beliefs from the people they marry. I've never really thought much about it, but like the fact that OP didn't know this about her husband, and I assume Louise didn't know this about Edward before they married or had kids, is like crazy, because this has been a thing for them the entire time, I'm sure. Like they've known this, haven't they, these men? But their wives had no idea. I mean, OP literally asked her husband, or ex-husband now, do you care about having children that aren't straight? He said, no, absolutely not. He was just lying. How can you combat that? What was there to do to get around that, to stop that? I don't think there is anything you can do, which is deeply troubling. But yeah, very sad end to that story. I mean, very sad story overall. I just hope that there is some sort of justice, because like you can't say Jake unalived himself because of his dad, but obviously that was a huge factor. So like, can the law not get involved? I don't know. Maybe it's too technical. Let me know in the comments down below if you know more than me on that. My husband doesn't want to play my co-worker's wedding. This was originally posted back in January 2023. Our workplace is smallish, with about 50 employees scattered amongst separate departments. A few months ago, I had to speak with a relatively new employee, Jane. She is in a different department than I am, and I rarely have to interact with her. She is a recent college grad, and this is her first job out of college. She normally gives off a friendly vibe, but during my talk with her, she was rather rude and basically insinuated I was stupid with the question I asked. After the interaction, I avoided her, and she has said and done more things in the office that give off entitlement vibes. It's incredibly frustrating. Jane has also recently become engaged and is actively searching for vendors for her wedding. And as karma would have it, my husband has the biggest, most successful wedding band in our state. I help him run the business behind the scenes, but he is the talent and is very well known in our area. I was replying to wedding inquiry emails recently when it just so happens Jane had inquired about pricing. She stated in the email she's seen the band play multiple times and, in her words, needs to have them play for her day to be perfect. I don't think she knows the wedding band and singer she wants is my husband. These emails are addressed to something like name@weddingband.com. We have a pretty common last name. I don't go out to see him play much, and he's only visited me a handful of times at work. My husband knows all the work drama and my frustration with this woman, and he doesn't really want me to have to deal with all of her wedding details behind the scenes. Her wedding day is out far enough that he hasn't booked it yet.
He also has a calendar on their website with dates that are open, so clients can clearly see if the date they want is booked or not. My husband suggests asking for an atrocious amount of money so that she will decline herself. I think we should just respond that they won't be a good fit and leave it at that. I want to hear what you would suggest would be professional for myself and my husband. Interesting one. For me, I would just set a price that you would actually be willing to do it for, because no matter who this person is, how annoying she might be, how entitled she comes across at work, and how much you don't want to do this, there is a price, right? Like, say you were like, yeah, we'll do it for $25,000. Then if she says, yeah, you get $25,000. That's what I would do. That is a little bit risky because obviously you do have a general rate, I assume. But also you can be allowed just to say, no, I don't want to do it, and then not give a specific reason. You can just say something as simple as, well, actually, something's come up and there are family commitments, or you don't even have to say that. Just say, sorry, those dates aren't going to work, despite the fact that they were there in your calendar, whatever. So it's an interesting one. I think I would be like, nah, 25K. And if she wants to do it, do it. But what do you think? Comment down below before we get into this update, which came 10 months later. I left it up to my husband about whether to reply to my coworker, Jane, saying he was available for her wedding. We planned to raise the prices for next wedding season regardless. So after much thought, he responded with a quote, and she accepted. My husband told me to ignore all emails from her and he would handle it himself. I suppose if he's doing that and she doesn't even know you're involved at all and you don't really have to do anything and he's happy to take that on, that's okay if he's willing to do that. Although, given the fact that he's heard so much about her, I'm sure, and how horrible she is from you, I'm surprised he's willing to do this, but let's continue. I cannot even begin to tell you the sighs my husband made any time he opened an email from her. Most of the emails to him were just chit-chat, nothing to do with wedding planning. It was getting to the point where my husband wouldn't even respond to emails unless they had a question that he needed to answer. For some context, most couples book a band about a year out. There's 5 to 10 emails in the initial booking, but then we crack down on the bulk of the stuff we need from them 2 to 3 months before. So over the course of a year, we receive about 40 to 50 emails from one couple. Jane sent my husband 109, yes, I counted, emails between February 2023 until September 2023. So in 6 months, she's sent 109 emails. What on earth? That's like one roughly every other day, if not more. That is insane. Now, that brings us to a few weeks ago. My husband got a call from the father of the groom, the person financing this wedding, who said that my husband's services were no longer needed and forfeited the deposit. My husband, not very sly at all, asked why, thinking maybe the price was the reason. Nope, Jane apparently has been cheating on her fiancé with someone at my work, and the fiancé called it off. I saw Jane at work a few days later, and she seemed fine, even though I now wonder which of our co-workers she has been seeing on the side. Wow, I did not... God, didn't think that story would end like that at all, just not related to your husband, OP, whatsoever. But yeah, fair enough. I suppose it worked out. I'm just a little bit... Well, I was going to say I was slightly interested as to why your husband accepted this work, despite the fact that you've spoken so badly about her. But then again, work is work, and I'm sure he could do a professional job. And the main reason is, you need the money. So it makes sense. But yeah, I would now be, if I was OP, on an absolute mission at work to find out exactly who this woman has been cheating with. That is drama. Okay, now let's get into our second story of today's episode. Now, I told you in the intro, this has a ridiculous title. How about this? Where do I, a 28-year-old man, even begin to inform my 28-year-old wife that I may have caught my younger brother, who is 23, and her younger married sister, who is 25, having sex in my parents' house? A lot going on there. And I think the real crazy thing about this title is not even necessarily that your guys' siblings are having fun. It's that one of them is married. Okay, this was posted in August of 2020. The title really does say it all, but I'll provide the details. I'm at home now and my wife is in the other room on her tablet. Earlier this evening, I drove by my folks' place to drop off some floor tiles I got for my father. He and my mother are celebrating their anniversary and are out of state on vacation. There was like a house party going on the same street, and it forced me to have to park a bit further away than usual due to all the cars, and I don't have access to my folks' garage door opener. So I park in front of a different house and I walk a little ways. I go into the house through one of the side doors to get at the garage. When I get in the house, I'm immediately struck with the sounds of sex. I'm grossed out and confused at first, thinking it's my parents, and they're both in their 60s. That leads me to the next question, which is, would you rather have seen what you're about to go on and see, OP, or your parents making an absolute racket at the age of 60? I actually think there's some beauty in that. I mean, going to town when your combined age is maybe 130 plus. I have to respect that. Anyway, let's carry on. Comment down below, what would you rather find? Before that image can settle, I glass through the door in the house that connects to the garage, and my brother's car is parked there. He doesn't live with my parents. For a second, I'm like, okay, creepy. He took a date back to my folks' place, but I reasoned it's because he has a messy apartment. Not wanting to cause a scene or ruin his fun, I duck out, thinking I'll come back tomorrow. On my way back to my car, I notice that the car parked in front of mine actually belongs to my sister-in-law. Now, I didn't see her in that house, and I have no idea what she sounds like during sex. Such an unnecessary comment, but fine. All I know is that her car was there. My folks moved here later in life, so I'm not super familiar with their neighbours, but there is a chance my sister-in-law was at the house party. She is a married woman with 2 kids. I haven't said anything to the wife yet. Part of me is like, keep your mouth shut and pretend you saw nothing. And the other part knows I ought to tell my wife. What the heck do I do? Okay, so when I first read this title, I presumed that OP 100% had seen his younger brother and his wife's younger sister going at it. But actually, he's not 100% sure. I'm just thinking, is there any way in which what you think has happened didn't actually happen? She's not going to be at that house party. I mean, she might be, but it's a bit of a coincidence, really. The one thing you do know for a fact is that it was your younger brother having sex. Well, I mean, almost definitely was your younger brother having sex with somebody, and your sister-in-law's car is right there. Oh, it's brutal. It's only going one way, this, surely. Let's have a quick look at the comments to see what people are thinking. Somebody said, there's nothing wrong with being honest and telling your wife what you saw. You aren't saying that her sister is cheating, you're literally just giving facts. Yeah, great point. I actually forgot to answer Opie's question, what should he do? And yeah, I think this is a great answer. I heard sex, I saw my brother's car, I saw your sister's car, there was a party going on at a neighbour's house. Your sister could be with my brother, or she could be at the party. Opie replied, saying, I've decided to do as someone suggested and drive by my folks tomorrow around the same time and see if the car is there. I'm also going to ask my brother why he's doing sexual things in my folks' house. I'm then going to ask him directly if it was her because her car was there. Based on his answers and how truthful I think he's being, I'll go to my wife about it. There's no sense in embarrassing my brother too much if he just had a random girl at the house. Actually, yeah, thinking about it, that is a sensible thing to do, because you wouldn't want to go to your wife with this information without knowing it's legit, and you can work out if it's legit or not before having to go to ask her or tell her what you may or may not have seen by speaking to your brother. And I'm sure by doing this, you will pretty quickly find out if it was your sister-in-law or not. So, sensible. Somebody else said, when you're by the house, call your sister-in-law and see what happens. Either that or stay in your car and see who leaves the house. I'm not sure about that. OP said, it's a different day now. If I drive down there and her car is still there, then it's obviously cheating. I mean, that is also something that you will find out anyway when you go and talk to your brother, assuming that he is at your parents' house. He probably isn't there either anymore. It is weird though. Her sister's husband's parents' house. I think that's right, yeah. So she's gone to her sister's husband's parents' house to have sex. That is like so weird and also like really risky as well. I mean, even if it is with OP's younger brother and he's like, yeah, it's cool, don't worry, my parents aren't going to be there. Surely you'd be like, then again, it is cheating. Like, you've got to go somewhere, don't you? Anyway, it's that time. 2 days later, we got this update. Well, I had the day off today and it was still gnawing at me. To catch everybody up, I'd gone by my parents' house yesterday to drop off some floor tiles. My brother, who doesn't live with them, had his car in the garage and there were sounds of 2 people having sex. As not to interrupt and cause embarrassment, I left. My sister-in-law's car was parked on the street, but there was a house party, so she may have been there. I don't think she was, but here we go. Well, today I went to drop off the tiles and neither car was there. I neglected to mention any of this to my wife and decided to just talk to my brother first to see what was going on. As he wasn't there, I figured I'd go pick up a case of beer and drive over to see him. Make up some story about being in the neighbourhood. As I'm on the way to do this, I get a call from my wife, who sounds a little distraught. She informs me that she just got off the phone with her sister and that she's apparently getting divorced. My sister-in-law and her husband actually haven't been living in the same apartment for like a week now. Hearing this, I expected her to tell me that my sister-in-law got caught cheating. But it was actually the opposite. The guy I thought I would be helping, well, it turns out he's been having a 6-month-long affair with their kid's former preschool teacher. My sister-in-law had been despairing for a week, having to tell anyone about this because she's ashamed of it. So I breathed a sigh of relief, knowing that if I had stumbled on what I stumbled on, at least there was no real wrongdoing there. I still kept it from my wife and opted to talk to my brother. I would disagree with that, by the way. Just because someone's cheated, I mean, it depends. Actually, no, you know what? I don't disagree with that, because I presume they've broken up at this point and they're not trying to fix their marriage. So yeah, fair enough. I suppose it's fair. I'm still not sure about choosing this individual, OP's brother, in OP's parents' house, but fair enough. You know, she's just found out she's been being cheated on for 6 months. Your logic goes out the window there a little bit. Fair enough. I have said fair enough there 55 times. Anyway, I don't usually show up out of the blue, so he was a little anxious that I was there. I told him about me and what I heard, and he apologized profusely. I then asked him about my sister-in-law's car, and he got quiet. Well, it turns out my sister-in-law wasn't telling my wife the whole truth. Apparently, she has known about her husband's affair for several months now, but didn't confront him until just recently. While worrying about who to talk to about all this, she bumped into my brother at a gas station. He told me that she basically broke down crying over it, and for the last few months, he's been letting her confide in him, and he's kept quiet about it. They started meeting up and having coffee together after that, and as my brother has depression, he was recommending a few good therapists. There was never any major flirting in their meetups. They actually talked about their kids. My brother has a daughter from a previous relationship, so he talked about her. My sister-in-law's husband, who didn't know his infidelity had been discovered, began to grow suspicious of my brother and sent him a message asking what's going on with his wife. Why are they suddenly liking each other's posts so much and texting? When my sister-in-law learned of the message, she saw red and finally confronted her husband, and he walked out. That was last week. So that takes us to yesterday. They went out for coffee again. My sister-in-law mentioned being worried about how to tell her folks and her husband's folks about his affair, but said she was feeling much better with him not in the house. She kept giving him signs, talking about her dead bedroom, talking about being lonely, talking about sexual frustrations, and my brother took the bait and took her to my folks' place, and the rest is history. When asked why he chose my folks' place, he said it's because they have a better TV, and he'd left his guitar there and needed to pick it up anyway. I told my wife when I got home, and she turned from being sad and nervous for her sister to quite playful about everything. So it's looking like my kids might have double cousins at some point. Wow, there we go. I don't know if this is the right word to say, but I kind of feel like that's a bit of a wholesome ending. You know, given what's happened to OP's sister-in-law and the fact that she's had to deal with this for so long, yeah, go have your fun. It sounds like her and OP's brother have an actual solid relationship. Yeah, you know, they've had sex now, but in terms of a friendly relationship where OP's brother has really helped his sister-in-law, yeah, go watch TV on a nice TV. That's the bit I don't really get. Why would you go to your parents' house because they have a better TV? Slightly strange, that. Not the best sort of reasoning. But apart from that, yeah, you're being cheated on for 6 months. Like, have your fun. It's your turn. Sort of what I'd say. I mean, to be fair, maybe, and again, it doesn't sound like your brother really had any plans to ever, like, have sex with her. So maybe he genuinely was like, well, yeah, we can go back to my parents' place. I need my guitar anyway. We can watch TV. They got a nice TV. And then he fully realized what was going on, or at least what she was hinting at, and it went from there. So although, like, in isolation, saying there's a better TV sounds stupid, maybe it's an actual reason. There we go. I think, like, it's actually all right. Like, your brother seems like a nice guy, and they had sex after she'd been cheated on for 6 months. I thought this story would be a lot weirder than it is. I think this is actually, like, the most legitimate way that a married person could have sex with their brother-in-law's brother. And all these familial connections, by the way, I'm trying to get them all right, but this is not my fault. Due to what I'm reading and the level of familial incest involved, in a legal way, but still, it's quite challenging. But there we go. This man asked for advice as to how to apologize to his son for kicking him out for being gay. Okay, so we're going back to May the 14th, 2016 for the start of this. So, I'm new to this sub, but I decided to use a throwaway because I'm embarrassed about what I did to my son. 11 years ago, I was a very conservative Christian. I was the type that would go to church with my family every Sunday and actually look forward to going. If you would have told me that I consider myself atheist in the future, I would have laughed in your face. I'm not proud of the man I used to be, but at the time, I really thought I was being the best person I could by living as a Christian and following God's rules. My son was outed when he was 16. And I reacted the way you'd expect a conservative Christian father to react, with hate and anger. At the time, I didn't think of it as hate though. I thought of myself as a good and loving father for being so upset that my son had chosen a sinful lifestyle. I forced him to go to counselling, but it didn't work. I know now that's because it never works, but at the time I blamed my son for not trying hard enough. I eventually kicked him out of the house because I couldn't have him there as a bad influence on his younger brothers and sisters. I never contacted him again, and he never contacted me or anyone else in our family. His mother died 2 years later, and because of the way she died, I started to question my faith. I started researching Christianity and science on my own, and eventually I stopped going to church. I gradually became less conservative, and now I consider myself atheist. I've been thinking a lot about my son the last couple of years. Every time I think about him, I feel like crying, and to be honest, I've shed a few tears while writing this. There's nothing I can do or say to make up for what I did, but I found his address online, and I also found his Facebook profile. When I started looking him up, I was scared to death of what I'd find, but it looks like he's doing good. I've been thinking a lot about how I should contact him, and even if I should, I'm so worried about how he'll react that I've written him about 15 letters and never actually sent one of them. I think that's the best way to go about it, sending a letter. But every time I write one and read it afterwards, I just imagine him reading it and throwing it in the garbage and chicken out and throw it away myself. I've not talked to my other kids about him and they've never brought him up. I just need advice on how to actually send the letter, what to write, and if I should even send it. Any advice at all would be greatly appreciated. Wow. I mean, where do I even start with that? To be honest, the one thing that comes to my mind, and I do mean this, is that you have no right to contact your son. He, if he wants to in the future, can contact you, but you have no right to contact him after what you've done. And you cannot blame this on religion. I'm sorry, you can't. You can't use religion as some sort of front and say that you hid behind it and you didn't know any better because you were a Christian and you went to church. Your actions were still your own actions. Doesn't matter if they were influenced by God or any religion or anything. You were the one that kicked your son out at the age of 16. So you have no right to contact him. And I think that you shouldn't. And if he wants to contact you, he'll contact you. But you made your bed. That is my honest reaction, to be honest. Because I can't imagine being that kid and being like, well, I've been kicked out of my family home because I'm gay. So that's my thoughts. But obviously, there's a long way to go in this story. We're going to get an update, of course. And first of all, we're going to have a look through what other commenters on Reddit have said. And I'll be honest, they're a little bit more lenient than me. But yeah, let me know in the comments down below. For those of you that are strongly religious or are atheist, I'm an atheist. That's worth saying. What do you think about what I've just said there? Do you agree or disagree? Do you think if someone is no longer religious, they can therefore go back on terrible things they've done in the past and apologize for them because they were religious? I mean, who knows? I don't, but interested to see your thoughts. As always, let's jump into the comments. Somebody said, "Oh, that is so hard. I think any letter you send should include the following: a complete apology with 0 qualifiers, an acknowledgement that you have done him a terrible wrong and that he is under no obligation to forgive you, your desire to be back in his life, on his terms, on his schedule, your willingness to facilitate a relationship with your other children that is not dependent on your son's relationship with you, in case your son wants to see his siblings, but not you, and then leave the door open for him to take the next step." Yeah, good advice if
you're okay with this guy sending his son a letter, which I'm not, to be honest. But if you are going to send a letter anyway, that is a great structure, and it reads well, and it is right. And maybe you could argue that just because this man did something so horrible so long ago, they have now changed. Therefore, should they still be paying for their sins themselves 10 years, 11 years later? I would argue to that. You've given your son so much trauma, and therefore, again, you don't get to decide this. And they're not just going to be like, oh, my dad's apologized after 11 years. I feel great now. The last 11 years of my life have been fantastic. Let's see what OP replied to this. As you can probably tell, guys, by the way, I'm not a big fan of OP or people like him. Anyway, I've written the same letter a million times, but I would love to get some objective thoughts on it, because every time I read and write it, it never seems like enough. Okay, here is the letter. Lucas, I don't even know where to begin when I write this letter. I've written it many times, but it never seems good enough to send to you. The first thing I have to apologize for is not telling you your mother died. She was diagnosed with ALS and passed away 9 years ago. I never contacted you to let you know she died, and I don't know if anyone else in our family did. Either way, I'm really sorry for not telling you and robbing you of the chance to say goodbye to your mother. Again, it's very difficult for me to read this without immediately being like, this is ridiculous. What? How can you not tell your kid that their mum's dying? Because they're gay. What? That makes zero sense to me. Your mother's death was extremely difficult for all of us, and it made me start to question my faith. Everyone at our church helped our family through her death, but I still had a lot of questions. So I started doing research on our religion and science. After a while, I realized I couldn't continue following the word of God the way I was brought up to do. It might be very hard for you to believe, but I no longer consider myself religious. So my wife was taken away from me earlier than she should have been, and that made me think, maybe God doesn't exist and maybe I'm not a fan of this religion, and therefore I'm now allowed to apologize to you. Not sure about that. Anyway, which brings me to how I treated you. At the time, I did what I thought was right for our family and you, but that does not change the fact that what I did was unforgivable. No, you didn't do what was right for your family. You didn't, because it was a terrible thing to do. Don't care about your religion. Not only did I kick you out when you really needed our love and support, but I made you go through counselling, which I've learned is closer to torture than actual counselling. I don't know what you did once you left home, but it truly breaks my heart to think of the things you might have done to survive. No one on earth deserves to go through what you've been through because of me, and I want you to know that I'm so sorry for what I've put you through. I completely understand if you never want to hear from me again, but I had to send this letter to you to know that if you want me in your life, I'm here. Whenever you're ready, in any way that you want. If you just want contact with your brothers and sisters, that's fine. If it takes you years to talk to me, that's fine. If you never want any contact with me, that's fine. Of course, I want to be a part of your life again, but if that's not something you want, I completely understand. There's no excuse for what I've done, and even if you are able to forgive me, I don't think I can ever forgive myself. I've known I should have sent this letter for years, but I've been too ashamed of myself to send it. I hope you feel no obligation to contact me. I only send this letter so that you know that I'm here for you now if you want. I love you so much, and I'll do whatever you want to make up for what I've done, even if that means never reaching out to you again, Dad. And there we go. I think I have to tell his brothers and sisters about this before sending the letter, and if they want, I'll include their contact information so that he doesn't have to go through me to reach out to them. As I said earlier, it's a struggle for me to read that and take it seriously. Obviously, now he's apologizing because he's realized what he did was so horrible. And I don't know if this is his sort of way of being making himself feel better, because he literally kicked his son out at 16 for being gay. And I want to remember that point. That is the main point here. This man has done that. Okay? So whatever other opinions you have on whatever I'm saying, or him or his son or anything, he kicked out his son at 16 for being gay. And that is literally all that I can have in my mind. How can you ever forgive someone for that? I don't think you can. I'm also wondering about OP's son's siblings and what they have to do with this. Hopefully we'll get more information later on, but surely his siblings now are of an age where they can think for themselves, and probably have been for a while, right? If OP's son is 27. Maybe they're still religious as well, but could they not have like tried to get in contact, or you know, what happened when the family kicked his son out, Lucas? Were they not, you know, told, or they were told that was the reason? They were like, oh yeah, it's fine. I don't know. A lot of questions. Let's carry on. All right. Someone else commented, I'm about your son's age now, and I haven't had a relationship with my family since about 21. It was incredibly painful and difficult, but I'm also doing pretty well now, and it made me who I am. If even now my parents sent me a genuine, true apology with no qualifiers, said they understood they could never take back the pain they caused, but wanted to know if there was anything they could do, anything at all, that would make up for it even a little, I'd be overjoyed. Okay. Well, first, I'd be furious. I'd probably yell at them, tell them they have some gall to try and make amends now after how they failed me. But if they let me yell and rage, told me to get it out, and they knew they deserved it, and still just expressed contrition and desire to be there for me on my own terms, it would take a great deal of time and a lot of yelling and tears, but eventually maybe something new could grow there. I think you should write to your son and tell him everything you told us, and make very sure to focus on his feelings and experiences. Make sure it's clear that everything will be on his terms. Maybe offer to pay for a session with a family therapist of his choice, and tell him that if he wants to spend the entire session just telling you how freaking angry he is, that's fine, and you'll accept it. Anyway, I hope my perspective is somewhat useful. Please send the letter. Send more than one if you have to, and tell him you respect anything he says. But you need to make it clear to him how much you want to be in his life in whichever way will make his life better. If and when he gets angry or says something hurtful to you, be calm, tell him you understand he's angry and hurting, and apologize again. Yeah, great advice on the surface. I just can't really get over the main point of this entire story. I can't. If my dad did that to me at the age of 16, I mean, it's hard to know, isn't it? Because I'm obviously not in that position, but I'd like to think that I would feel disgusted that he'd even have the audacity to send me a letter to apologize. How can you apologize for 11 years of like trauma and being kicked out of your, like, you just can't. Like, I don't know, if I murdered your sister watching this right now and then apologized to you, I mean, I don't know, we talk about like forgiveness and stuff, but maybe this son Lucas needs this, but it's very hard for me to genuinely be like, yeah, send the letter, you deserve to send the letter. But sure, let's carry on. OP replied, your perspective is very useful. Thank you. I've tried to imagine what he might feel or think if I send a letter a million times, but to actually read your thoughts on this is very eye-opening. I can handle him yelling at me if it means I get to see him and hear his voice again. Yeah, you can handle him yelling at you for 11 years of disgraceful behavior. It's like, this is just, I can't find comparisons here at all that make this like right or fair to send a letter. That's, I think, what I'm getting at. If you can't tell, I'm not a big fan of OP here, despite the fact that he seems like a nice person in terms of his actual writing, and yeah, it's good that he wants to apologize. I'm not a fan of him at all. Someone else said, a few things. Does he know his mother is dead? You need to make no excuses whatsoever or try and qualify your behavior. This is about him, not about you. Keep in mind, this might still, probably be a huge source of pain for him. You getting in touch might upset him deeply. Is it worth it? Especially since he's in a good place. This may well have been extremely hard earned given what happened to him. That comment on screen is very, very good. Big fan indeed. What you're doing is a fairly common technique for people who have behaved as you have to lure the sinner back in and try and fix them again. Oh my goodness. He may be aware of this and believe this to be a motivation. I hope not. 100% use Facebook. Do not use his address. Knowing that you know his address might scare the heck out of him. Make contact with zero expectations. He is well within his rights to either ignore you or send you a very strong negative response. I'm sorry about your wife, and I'm very sorry you found yourself in this situation with your boy. You're learning the you reap what you sow lesson in the hardest way. Again, yeah, he is. But what about his son? Like, his son would be, I don't know, he'd give away a lifetime to learn the reap what you sow lesson. He's learning the lesson of, well, no lesson, but he's dealing with my family completely betrayed me, disowned me, and just sacked me off at the age of 16 because I'm gay. And that's a bit of a harder lesson, I think, to have to learn than you reap what you sow. Although I am disgusted, I must say props to you for changing your mind on this, the comment continues, and taking a more positive path and outlook. You have no idea how rare you are, and I know that must have taken great strength and a ruthless and painful analysis of your behavior to do so. I hope you find some peace on this issue either way. No, you're not getting any props from me. Sorry. I'm not as lenient as this commenter. I would not say props to you for changing your mind, because I wouldn't want anything to do with you ever. To be honest, this all comes back to me. If you have this belief that being gay is worth kicking your child out over, then you are one of the worst people on the planet. So I don't care if you repent or you realize you're wrong. I just don't care. Anyway, OP replied, I don't know if he knows about his mum dying. I never contacted him to tell him, and I don't know if anyone in our family did. Very good. That seems nice. Then, in relation to the comment about it might being a huge source of pain for Lucas, OP said, that's why I'm considering not contacting him at all. I don't know what he's been through because of what I did. I'm just relieved he's alive. But it's not uncommon for kids in that situation to live on the street and get themselves into a lot of trouble. If he's at a good place right now, I don't want him to have to relive everything he's been through. I felt like Facebook would be more invasive than a letter, but maybe in this day and age, it's the opposite. Yeah, if there's any tiny doubt that you might change his, life in any way, and it looks like it's good, OP's son this is, then you don't send the letter. And clearly there is doubt, so therefore you don't send the letter. And you deal with your crimes for the rest of your life. All right, interesting comment here. Out of curiosity, what are your other children's take on this? Here we go. Have they expressed any interest in reaching out to him? We haven't talked about him in years. At the time, me and his mother told him he was kicked out because he'd chosen a sinful life and that there was nothing more we could do for him and that he needed to find his way back to God on his own. We never said he was gay. Around the time I was starting to realize that what I'd done was wrong, one of the kids asked about him while we were eating dinner, and I reacted very badly and told them to never ask about him again. I felt guilty, and I knew they'd be pretty upset if they knew why he was kicked out, so I couldn't bring myself to talk about it with them. Oh my goodness me, do they still not know the reason he was kicked out? If they don't know, then you are an even bigger disgrace than I thought you were when I first started reading this. I'm going to be honest, this is extremely hard for me to read, because I'm just getting angry, because it's just so stupid. There are 3 things in here which I hate so much, which I can explain at the end. But this is challenging to read. I'm going to get through it, I think. But if I get more angry, I might have to stop. Right, someone else said, you may need to practice in a way by coming clean to your kids at home first. You can't really humble yourself to your eldest child if you haven't faced the music at home. They need to know and process what you did to their eldest sibling. You're going to have to humble yourself at the most basic level to your children because you failed as a parent immensely. Hopefully, your children didn't inherit your religious zeal. Boom. I like that a lot. You never mentioned how your wife felt about your actions before she passed, how she felt about you kicking her child out, for example. We made the choice together, OP said. I expected her to ask me to find him when she was dying so that she could say goodbye, but she never did. If I had just done it without waiting for her to ask, things might have been very different now. It's a good thing she died. A painful death. Yeah, I'm going to that extent. I genuinely am. Someone said, we don't usually get much of a chance to ask people about decisions like kicking their son out of the house. So I'm going to ask, how did you reconcile that with Christianity? What part of the Bible says you can abandon your minor child just because they lead a sinful lifestyle? Presumably you are aware as a Christian that everyone is an unrepentant sinner, yes? Why did you believe at the time that the sin of homosexuality was somehow in a category of its own? I'm atheist now too, but even as a creationist, evangelical Christian, I couldn't have countenanced the action you took. And I can't understand the Christian parents who believe that the God of the prodigal son wants them to abandon their children to the streets. What on earth did you think you were doing? Exactly. Then this commenter quotes the now 11 years later, I feel horrible for what I did and want to contact him and apologize, but I can't get myself to send the letter, saying, do you deserve his forgiveness before you've even found the courage to ask for it? Roasted. OP replied to this, and we are going to get into the update just after this. I don't want it to seem like I'm defending what I did, but I can explain the way we were thinking. At the time, I was sure being gay was a choice, and if we let him stay in our house, our other children would think we were accepting of his choice to live in sin, and it would be easier for them to follow in his footsteps. We also believed that we'd given him all the help we could and that there was nothing more we could do. He needed to hit rock bottom and find his way back to God on his own. We believed we were helping all of our children making that decision. I know, it sounds ridiculous, but at the time, it all made perfect sense to us. I cannot stress how much I need this update to be negative in terms of OP and him not getting what he wants. And either him not sending a letter, which would be fantastic. I don't think that's going to happen. Not getting in contact at all would be great. But if his son, I don't know, accepts his apology, I'll just be gutted. Because I just don't think you can get away with that sort of stuff. Let's see what happens, right? I'll be devastated, by the way, if this apology gets accepted. I really will. May 30th, 2016, 2 weeks after the original post. This is the update. Actually, sorry, before we get into that, there is just one final edit that OP left on his original post after all the comments, saying, I just wanted to add a thank you for all the great advice. I know some of you think I come across as if I'm expecting him to forgive me and have a relationship with me straight away. This isn't the case. I'm very much aware that the chance of him never wanting any contact with me is pretty high, but I'm not sending the letter just because I want to possibly have him in my life again. I feel like he deserves to hear that I know that what I did was wrong. He deserves an apology. What he does with the information in the letter is his choice, and whatever choice he makes will be accepted and respected by me. I've called all my other kids and invited them to dinner tomorrow so that I can tell them about their brother and the letter. I'm very nervous about it, but it has to be done sooner rather than later. Okay, let's see what happened after that. This is the update. I just wanted to give you guys an update and also thank you for all the great advice and insight. It was really tough to read some of the more angry comments, but I understand why some of you were angry with me. What I did was horrible and unforgivable, so I was expecting a few angry comments. Yeah, I imagine it was tough to read some angry comments. Now imagine how tough it might have been to be kicked out your own house for being gay at 16. Something to think about. What did bother me a little bit though was everyone who was saying that I only wanted to apologize to my son out of selfish reasons and wanted to guilt him into being in my life again. It worried me that that was the impression I was giving some of you, because that's not what I wanted at all. I love my son, and I just felt like he deserved an apology and a chance at having a relationship with his siblings, and that if he wanted me back in his life, I'm here now, even though I should have always been there for him. I wasn't expecting him to want to have contact with me again, but I wanted him to know it was an option if that's what he wanted. Again, you deserve an apology, son, and a chance at having a relationship with your siblings. Yeah, we didn't need to lose 11 years for that to be obvious. It's unfathomable to me. I invited my kids over for dinner the day after I posted here, and they all came, and I sat them down. So they've all left the house, by the way, that means as well. And I sat them down and I told them the truth. It was a very painful conversation for all of us and lots of tears, but I was happy the truth was finally out. They all wanted to send him letters as well, and we decided to send them together with all our contact information. I feel bad for the kids, you know. Imagine that. Your dad's told you that what actually happened when you were probably very young, impressionable. You know, when you're young, you have to massively respect your parents, and you take their actions and what they do as the right thing a lot of the time, because that's just how it is. And then you get told 11 years later, the reason why you haven't spoken to your brother in 11 years is because your parents kicked him out for being gay. How do you react to that? It's crazy. Anyway, I don't know how to explain the feeling I had after we sent the letters. It was a mix of a lot of emotions, and then waiting to see if he'd reply to any of the letters was also a weird mix of emotions. I didn't really know what to expect, but I couldn't help but hope that he would at least reply to one of us. Our family tried to eat dinner together every Sunday. It's an old habit. Everyone can't always make it, but the Sunday after sending the letters, we were all together. No one had heard from him yet, which wasn't really surprising. We talked about how he probably needed time to process everything. It must be very bizarre and overwhelming to suddenly get an envelope full of letters from your estranged family. The doorbell rang while we were eating dinner, and my oldest daughter answered it. When she came back, we were extremely shocked to see that the person at the door was my son. I can't help but cry while I'm writing this because it was just so emotional to see him standing there in front of me. Everyone got up to hug him, but I wasn't sure what to do, so I just sort of stood there with tears in my eyes. Is that because he's gay? You didn't want to touch him? Makes sense. When his siblings let him go, he looked at me, and I was half expecting him to yell at me and half expecting him to punch me, but he just walked over and gave me a hug. I completely broke down and he started to cry too. We all stood there crying for a minute before we finally were ready to actually talk, and we all talked for hours. There's no words to describe how it felt to see my son after all these years and hear him talk. I could listen to him talk all day, apart from the fact you couldn't, because you didn't listen to him talk for about 3,500 days, actually more, between you kicking him out at the age of 16 and him being 27. He said he couldn't figure out what to write in a letter or what to say in a phone call, so he just got in his car and drove here. It was really unexpected, but really wonderful. He told us about his life from the day he left, and it was very difficult to hear what he'd been through because of me, but I needed to hear it. Apparently, his aunt, my sister, had been in contact with him after he left, and she told him about his mum dying, and she sent him money now and then. There you go, an actual, wow, a decent person in this story, that's nice. He's been through a lot, but he's doing really well now. After sitting and talking for a couple of hours, we went outside to talk, just him and me, and long story short, he forgives me. He said that it will take a long time for him to really trust me again, I hope he never does, but that he's been angry with me for years and he's tired of it and ready to start building a relationship again. My question here is this. Obviously holding on to that much anger for so long is extremely tiring. I can't even imagine. Is there a chance that OP's son is forgiving his dad just so that he can relax a bit more in his life and not wake up every day so furious with his parents and with the life that was, pushed on him at 16? Do you know what I mean? In a way, what I'm trying to get at is he actually genuinely forgiving, or does the trauma and what he lives with has that forced him to forgive so that he can go on living his life and not have that much anger each and every day? You let me know in the comments down below, because I think to myself, if I was that angry every single day, I would not be able to carry on. Therefore, I would have to change something. Interesting topic of debate. Comments? I can't wait for them. I genuinely cannot wait on this story. Anyway, he left about an hour after our conversation, and we all exchanged phone numbers, and his siblings added him on all their social media stuff. He lives about an hour and a half away, but he said he'll let us know when he's got time for another Sunday dinner. He sent me a couple of texts since then, and I couldn't be happier than I am right now. I know I don't deserve to be forgiven, and I don't deserve to have a relationship with my son, but I'd be lying if I said that I didn't have a small hope that it would happen. I know that I have to be extremely respectful towards his wishes and let him take the lead with all of this. I told him to let me know if he felt like we were being too pushy and that he's the boss of this whole situation. We all want to go at the pace he feels comfortable at, and he's always welcome here whenever he feels like it. Isn't that nice? How lovely. So yeah, I'm extremely excited for the future and also incredibly grateful for all the advice you guys gave me. You really gave me the push I needed to tell my kids and send that letter. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Let's get into the comments before I give my final... What is a good word to use here? Disparaging just doesn't seem anywhere near strong enough. Comments was what I was going to say. Anyway, your sister is a saint, and you should also thank her as well for actually acting like family to her nephew. Yes. OP, I went by her house the day after with flowers and cake as thank you. I asked her how much money she sent him and offered to pay her back, but she refused. So I'll just have to get her really nice birthday presents the rest of her life. Yeah, make sure to get your son nice birthday presents as well for the rest of his life, to make up for the 11 years which you just ruined. Someone else said, why didn't you ask him to sit down to dinner with the family? I did. He wasn't hungry though. We all sat at the dining room table and talked. And there we go. That was a struggle. That was a very, very tough story to read. And multiple times during that, I wanted to stop reading because I think this whole thing is an absolute disgrace. But I suppose we got through it. Just like reading the comments on this, I hope they successfully reconnected and worked through all the pain caused by OP. I just don't know if I agree with that. OP does not deserve any part in his son's life at all. I want his son to run off and be super happy, and I want OP to die. That is what I genuinely think. Now let me talk about his kids, his siblings, OP's siblings. I feel very sorry for them as well. And I don't really blame them because, as I said earlier, I do think you follow your parents' lead in this sort of thing. But again, are they not aware enough when they get to the age of 18 plus that they have a sibling that they haven't seen in years? Would you not be really would you not just want to get in contact, despite the fact that your dad said no more discussion about this? I could not be intrigued by that and want to get in contact with my brother of all people and work out what has gone on there. So yeah, I don't blame them. I do think they could have done more though. Yeah, I mean, I'm just reiterating what I've been saying this whole episode, but I just think this whole religious thing of you can't be gay, it's against my religion, is such a disgrace. And people that believe that sort of stuff do not deserve any forgiveness ever and deserve to rot in hell. Maybe the most strong I've ever been on one of these episodes, but I'm not going to sugarcoat my reaction to this. I know there'll be people watching that don't agree. There'll be very religious people watching this that are the opposite of me, but I'm not going to lie about how I feel about this one. I think this whole thing is an absolute disgrace. I mean, I know my granny watches pretty much all of these videos. She has my uncle, a gay son. Imagine if she had kicked him out. It's just ridiculous. I can't quite fathom that some people do this sort of thing and then use their religion, or do it because their religion, use their religion to allow it. I don't know. It's crazy. Thankfully, this is happening less and less in the world. My uncle is married to my other uncle, which is great. Hopefully, I'm actually going to be seeing him next week in Poland, which would be amazing if he's able to come. But yeah, imagine I was told at a young age, oh no, you can't see your uncle, sadly, because yeah, he did something so sinful that you can never see him again. And I was like, oh, I wonder what that is. Oh yeah, he's gay. He was born gay. There we go.
Stepdad cheats on my mum, so we get revenge. I moved in with my mum after her marriage of 25 years with my bio dad was ended. He was a manipulative jerk, but that's another story. Shortly after the divorce, my mum introduced me to her boyfriend at the time, Chris. Now, my mum worked as a correctionals officer at the county jail. The boyfriend was a former inmate, in for a DUI. That should have been the first red flag, but my mum was grieving a long marriage, and I didn't want to push the subject. Chris seemed to make her happy, and that was enough for me. Me, my bro, and my sis all moved in with my mum and Chris, and we seemed to get along okay. Chris and I bonded a bit over our love of video games, and all seemed well. That is until 2017. Due to Chris's prior DUI, he had to go in regularly for probationary checkups at the courthouse. One day, he didn't return, and we all got a little worried. We then received a phone call from him from Texas. Turns out, when he arrived at the courthouse that day, he was jumped by the FBI. His family from Texas was implicated on a number of gang and drug-related crimes, and due to a situation where he was in a vehicle during a drug handoff, he was on the hook as well. He ended up agreeing to testify against his family members in exchange for a shorter sentence, and he was allowed to be out of prison before the trial. Soon after, the drinking started. Now, obviously because of his DUI, Chris was clearly no stranger to drinking. He began to drink more and more, to the point where he was consuming half a 24-pack of beer a day. Chris was a mean drunk. He regularly started fights when wasted, and while they never got physical, he wasn't exactly kind with his words. My mum enabled his behaviour for several years, saying the stress was getting to him from work and from the upcoming trial. Finally, after several years, my mum had had enough. Chris came home extremely drunk one night, and my mum confronted him. She asked if he'd been drinking, and when he didn't deny it, she kicked him out. He went to live with a friend temporarily. The next morning, Mum asked us to help gather a few of his essentials so that he didn't have to re-enter the home until he was sober. While we were gathering his things, we heard a knock at the front door. We opened it to find Betty, one of Chris's co-workers and someone I went to high school with. She told my mum she had something important to share. After sitting my mum down and telling her not to share where she got the info from, Betty told my mum about how Chris was cheating on my mum with Darla. How he regularly had Darla perform sexual acts in and around his workplace. How Betty had caught them, and how Chris told her that if she ever told my mum, he'd fire her. He was the store manager. And finally, how Darla was pregnant. My mum was angry. After the initial shock wore off, she told us to round up all of Chris's things and to dump them outside. We took everything of his out of the house and tossed it all in the alley behind our house. Chris had no reason or ability to return to the house. It was rented with only my mum on the paperwork, so no issues there. In the meantime, she called and confronted him. He confessed to the entire affair and that he was happy Darla was pregnant because that meant he'd finally have a child of his own. Mum refused to have more kids. We three were massive strains on her body. She likely wouldn't survive anymore. He refused to apologize for any of his actions. My mum arranged for him to collect his items from the alley with an officer present, and he left our lives. So now for the moment we've all been waiting for. The revenge. Now, my mum clearly wanted to dust her hands of him and move on. She was already quite emotional from the whole ordeal and wanted nothing more from him. But my sister, brother, and I had other ideas. First, we called his workplace. DQ operates as an independently owned franchise, and the owner of this branch owns several branches in the area. He was also a good friend. We informed him of the sexual acts being performed on the premises, and he went through the processes of getting Chris booted from his position and barred him from any of the branches in the area. Funnily, Betty got his position after he left, and now runs a tight and clean ship. Chris no longer had a job or a place to live, and so went to live with Darla in a town about an hour away. We found out that he started working at another DQ in that town and informed the owner of that location of the situation. It took significantly longer due to there being no current indecent actions occurring there, but eventually he lost that job too. Soon after, Chris began driving around our neighborhood, seemingly stalking my mum and our family, probably because of his job loss. Now, due to the whole situation in Texas, he never had his probation lifted for his DUI, and thus still did not have a license. He never had to drive when he lived with us, since work was local and we could drive him as needed, but here he was, clearly driving around by himself when he shouldn't be. We contacted the police and informed them about Darla's vehicle in our neighborhood and that we believed Chris was driving it without a license. We told them to pull over the vehicle next time they see it, as it would likely be Chris driving again. Sure enough, a few weeks later, we were told that Chris indeed was pulled over and sent back to the local jail for driving without a license and while intoxicated. The police also did a search of the home he was staying at and found several guns at the premises. Since he was a felon, he was not legally allowed to have weaponry on the premises, meaning there was more jail time tacked on. By the time his jail time had finished, it was just in time for him to be sent back to incarceration in Texas for the trial. Chris's son was born while Chris was in prison. Darla evidently realized what an absolute butt Chris was and cut ties with him while he was in prison. During his prison time, Chris started sending tons of letters to my mum, stating how sorry he was, pleading to take him back, and ranting about how it wasn't his fault. This was all in the same letter, mind you. Mum burnt every one of them. We moved on, moving out of states. Chris evidently got out of prison some years ago and now lives in Kansas, struggling and fighting child support, which Darla sued him for. Mum now has a new boyfriend who treats her right and cares a lot more than Chris ever did. My brother and sister moved on and out, and I still live with mum, assisting her with the newly purchased home that we've been renovating. Life's looking okay. I was reminded of this story by a chat with a coworker about cheaters, and I thought to post it here for others to enjoy. Well, to be honest with you guys, the first thing that kind of springs to mind, or the first reaction I have after finishing that story is, wow, Chris was driving around your neighborhood in Darla's car under the influence and with a gun probably as well. That is extremely scary, and I'm kind of, well, I don't know, I kind of want to say that it's lucky that you guys weren't affected or harmed, or that he didn't find you first. I don't know what else he could have been doing that other than trying to look for you and get his own revenge. That sounds terrifying. So look, great revenge and all, but genuinely I think that could have gone so much worse. Wow. Like, look, I'm all for good revenge stories, but by tracking him down and getting him fired again, which, yeah, I can't argue, is great revenge in isolation, that made him come back to the neighborhood and look for you guys, right? You know, and we know what he's like, as I've just said, driving under the influence with a weapon. So yeah, like, good revenge, but also there could have been a really, really tragic ending. So I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that. Maybe that revenge went too far. Obviously, in the end, it was fine and it was good revenge. But think of potential consequences. What do you guys think about that? Sometimes does revenge go too far? Would it have been fine just, making him lose his job in the neighborhood you're in, and by the time he's in Kansas and stuff, just leave him to it? That's enough. Because again, you don't want to damage someone to such an extent that they then have nothing to lose anymore. Because I think that's what has kind of happened here. Let me know in the comments down below. That is it's a controversial one, but yeah, I reckon that might have been a bit too far just for your own safety. When your racket with the local cops bites you in the butt internationally. This happened a few years ago when I was serving overseas with the US military. The location I was at was in a poorer area. There's a fair number of panhandlers, a lot of petty crime, and just people doing stupid stuff. Well, one racket that goes on in this area, and apparently in other areas of the country too, is the local cops incentivize reporting vehicles without a date inspection sticker. Apparently, they give these people access to the inspection database if they think the sticker is fake or stolen, which actually does happen. If you drive a motorcycle, one of the things they tell you when you're in process is to keep the sticker in your wallet and not on the vehicle, or else it'll just get peeled off. Anyway, what these people will do if they find a car with an out-of-date sticker, or if they run the plates and find it's out of date, they'll jimmy the door open, steal every single thing out of the car, and leave a note that they've taken it to the police station. The idea is that you show up at the police station to get your stuff, and they force you to pay the fine for an overdue sticker, and then give you a deadline for an inspection, or else you'll get another fine. Well, I came out to my car one morning, and lo and behold, there was a note on my seat saying that all my stuff was at the local police station because my inspection sticker was fake and I had to go and get it. Now, not only am I late for work, my kid's also going to be late for school because there's no bus and I have to drive her every morning on my way. Also, my inspection sticker is not out of date, so I've got no idea what's going on. Now, here's the thing that was extremely problematic. I put my passport and my wife and kids in the glove box because I was taking them to the base to get some paperwork done. I was also going to grab some paperwork for my wife to apply for a new passport because hers had expired. I'm very forgetful, so I put them in the night before and made sure the car was locked. Yeah, dumb mistake. Anyway, I get to the station, ask them what the heck is going on, and then when I have them look at the inspection documents that the guy had taken, which clearly stated the car had been inspected and was current, they apologized and told me they'd give me my things back and I had to wait there for a second. I asked to file a police report for theft, but they looked at me like I had 3 heads and told me nothing was stolen, even though somebody broke into my car and took my things. This is when a light bulb went off in my head, and this might fall into the unethical category. The guy had taken official US passports, which might be a problem, but probably nothing would come of it since they were turned right into the police. However, I asked him where my wife's passport was. They told me that whatever is there is there. I said I needed a police report because I needed to contact the US Embassy about a stolen passport and the fact that this police station would know exactly who the person was that stole it because they had dropped off my things that morning. I've never seen someone's attitude change as quickly as that cop's attitude changed. He tried to talk me out of filing a police report, but I was pretty insistent. So I went ahead with the report, and then I did contact the embassy and reported the passport stolen and gave them all the information of the police station. And when I got the police report, I emailed it to them as well. I wound up getting a free passport out of it for my trouble. The embassy told me they were going to handle it, and from what I heard, the person who broke into my car actually got arrested and fined, and was looking at additional charges because he stole foreign documents. I really would have liked to be a fly on the wall when one of the local cops rolled into wherever he was and told him to come with them. I don't feel bad at all. Hopefully the dude learned his lesson and I didn't have any further issues until I went back home. Okay guys, look, I'll be completely honest with you. I don't really understand what's just happened there. It's not often that this happens, I'll be honest, because a lot of these stories are pretty self-explanatory and the revenge is, you know, it's kind of makes sense or it's obvious. I don't get it. Why is the fact that, I don't know, maybe I'm just barking up the wrong tree, but from my point of view, something is awry or something is unethical because OP's wife's passport has already expired. I just don't get it, right? I don't understand. So what happens is they take all the stuff, hand it to the police, then you go to the police to get it back, and then they say, actually, you need a date of inspection or whatever on your car, pay for that now, so you get a fine. You know, obviously a bit backwards, but yeah, that's I guess, some sort of racketeering with the local cops. However, what is it about OP asking where his wife's passport was that made this into some form of revenge? What's the difference, I guess I'm trying to say, between his passport and their child's passport being taken and his wife's expired passport being taken? Surely taking any passport at all is illegal, or handing a passport in, unless he's saying or claiming that his wife's passport wasn't expired. Pretty much, guys, get in the comments down below. I don't really know. I think I'm missing something here. I've looked through the comments and no one has even mentioned it, so I'm not entirely sure. But you know, maybe you let me know in the comments. I'll have another think, but that's my initial reaction. I don't know what's happened. Look, I get the fact that these are US passports, and maybe that is the thing that's illegal here. However, I don't understand why OP has specifically referenced his wife's passport. It's got to be to do with the fact that it's expired in some regard, or I don't know. I'm missing something perhaps, or something's missing from the story. But again, guys, comment down below, because yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but an interesting one nonetheless. Deliberately deplete my prepaid phone balance. You will pay for it 1,000 times over. I went to middle school in the early 2010s, right before smartphones really took off. I got my first phone right before starting 6th grade. It was a slide phone with a pay-as-you-go plan that cost 10 cents per minute for calls and per text message sent or received. Worse yet, sending or receiving photos cost 25 cents each. It was very expensive, and my parents only gave me $100 a year for this. If I exceeded that amount, I had to cover the rest with my limited birthday and Christmas money that I had. Fortunately, most of my friends were good about helping me preserve the balance. They would call and I'd let the call drop, but immediately call back on a landline so it wouldn't count as a call, and they'd email me or message me on Skype for most things. Everything was good until Derek joined the group in 7th grade. At first, we thought he was funny, but we quickly got fed up with him as he was very unpleasant and exhibited many antisocial behaviors. He started drama within the friend group and also caused issues between us and other kids outside of the group. He was manipulative and always played the victim when others rightfully called him out on his trash, and he knew how to charm parents, so getting rid of him was easier said than done. He was the one friend who didn't respect my phone situation. He very frequently texted me dumb memes, even though I told him multiple times to just email or Skype them to me instead, since picture text messages cost 25 cents each for me. Unfortunately, blocking phone numbers was a feature that was unavailable for this pay-as-you-go plan, so there was nothing that I could do as he spammed my phone. One day he got mad at me for some reason and spammed my phone with memes. He must have sent me over 100 lolcats over text. He kept sending them until I lost service since my phone balance was depleted. I'd lost the $40 remaining in my account as a result. I was extremely angry and demanded that he pay me the $40 he had cost me, and he refused and said it wasn't his problem. I got home from school really upset and told my dad about the situation, expecting him to go and tear Derek's mother a new one and demand the money. But my dad said that it wasn't worth the battle. I even asked him about a small claims court, but he said that not all battles are worth fighting and that the effort wasn't worth $40. He took me to the carrier's store and loaded $50 onto the phone. The carrier changed my phone number and they managed to block Derek's number. They'd initially said that blocking phone numbers wasn't possible with this plan, but my dad insisted and would not leave the store until they did it. I was extremely paranoid about my phone number being leaked and other kids spamming it to screw with me. Fortunately, my parents got iPhones that summer and got me one too, and the new family plan had an unlimited text plan. Nonetheless, I was still angry at the $40 he essentially stole from me out of malice. Fortunately, not too long after, there was a big blowout between Derek and the rest of the friend group at the end of the school year, and we permanently kicked him out of the group. He was an outcast the following year in 8th grade. Nobody was tolerating his trash anymore, and he changed schools the year after, and we never heard from him again. Fast forward to a few years ago. I was back home for a few months between graduating college and starting a new job on the other side of the country. I went out to some garage sales one Saturday morning, and I ended up at Derek's house. I recognized his mother, but I don't think she recognized me. I guess glasses and a beard is all you need. I noticed some Pokemon napkins out for sale, and when I picked them up to look at them, Derek's mum said that her son had been obsessed with Pokemon for his whole life, and that she was tired of Pokemon stuff occupying her home for so many years. I said that these napkins were for my younger cousin, who was really into Pokemon, and I asked if she had any more Pokemon stuff. She said she didn't know that people were still into that, and that there were a few boxes in the attic with her son's old stuff. She actually took me inside the house, which I never imagined I'd set foot inside ever again, and let me climb up the attic ladder and take down several large boxes to look through. The first one had Christmas ornaments in it and other junk, but I freaked out inside when she opened a box jam-packed with Pokemon video games in the original boxes, though I kept my cool on the outside. The whole reason I had agreed to go inside in the first place was because I was holding out hope of this exact scenario happening. See, I knew Derek was obsessed with Pokemon. Our friend group liked Pokemon back in the day, even when other kids thought it wasn't cool. But Derek was on a whole different level. He bragged about his collection all the time. At the time, he had every single main series game in the original box and in mint condition, as he always had to add in. I went to his house once and he was showing me his collection. He yelled at me for touching one of the games. Nobody was allowed to do that except him. He had many older Nintendo games in excellent condition, but Pokemon was his favourite. He had had a couple of incidents with his mum damaging or throwing away his things, not out of malice, but just ignorance, as she didn't think the games or collectibles had any value. Fast forward into the present day, I was thinking about this when I asked his mother if she had any other Pokemon stuff. So she ended up bringing out the motherload. We opened all of the boxes that she had me bring down. Within the boxes, there was the beloved collection of Pokemon games, all very well preserved, as well as several Nintendo consoles, hundreds of games, 24 binders full of Pokemon cards, and there was also a box of many Lego sets with the original boxes and everything, with many old Star Wars sets. When I saw Jango Fett, I knew I struck gold. I told her that I liked old Legos as well, and I asked her how much for the 5 boxes of games, cards, and Lego sets, and she thought for a second and said, $100 a box, or $400 for all 5? I told her I'd take it all, and I hauled ass to get to an ATM. I loaded the 5 boxes into my dad's truck and immediately drove home. I knew there was potentially tens of thousands of dollars of goods here. This was the score of a lifetime, and I finally felt vindicated for the $40 that Derek had taken from me all those years ago. I ended up giving all the stuff to my uncle, who is a hobbyist eBay reseller. He offered to sell it all. He was willing to go through the effort and sell everything individually. And despite my insistence, he said that he wouldn't take more than a 10% cut of the profits after all fees and taxes. We went through and logged every single item along with the estimated value, and the total of the whole lot was about $40,000. Oh my goodness me. 40,000 was a poetic number, since this was 1,000 times the value of what Derek stole from me all those years ago. Wow. Now the title actually makes literal sense. Deliberately deplete my prepaid phone balance, you will pay for it 1,000 times over. Literally. Oh, that is so good. My uncle sold most of the lot before the end of the summer and ended up writing me a check, though it was considerably less than $40,000, but it was still a life-changing amount of money for me. I was able to pay off my remaining student loans and put the rest towards a down payment on a new car. That is an unbelievable story. Now that is a glorious, glorious story of revenge. As I said at the end there, I was not expecting the title to be so literal. That is phenomenal. I've got to say, first of all, that initial plan that you're on with your phone is an absolute disgrace. Secondly, Derek is a disgrace for abusing that plan, knowing full well it was costing you that much. I mean, back in the day, some of you are probably too young to remember this now, but the oldies among you, the more mature, I guess. I'd include myself in this. Back in the day, you know, we used to have absolutely disgraceful phone contracts. I remember, like, you'd text another country and it would cost you like 50p for me in the UK per text. I remember one time I was texting someone in Switzerland, had no idea about this. Then my dad had the bill and just said, Jack, why do I have this unbelievably large charge on your latest phone bill? Who have you been texting? And I was like, yeah, I did not realize that. But at least that time it was my own fault, or I guess my own lack of knowing. Whereas this time, someone knowing that you're going to have to pay a lot of money for their actions, that is very, very poor. And it makes this justice and this revenge so, so sweet. Great stuff. Obviously, his mum is none the wiser about the true value of Pokemon and cards and everything related to the game these days, especially in original condition and in good nick. But wow, $40,000 or even anything close to that. That is insane. Love it. How a PE teacher put my sister in the hospital. So this is about my older sister, who I'll be calling Jane for this post. Now, Jane has asthma. She's had it ever since she was a baby and gets it pretty badly. We've had to spend more than one Christmas in the hospital because she had pneumonia, and the school was very well aware that she has asthma. She always had an inhaler on her, and the front office had a nebulizer for emergencies, and there were multiple doctor notes on file limiting what she could do. She couldn't play a wind instrument in band class. She was allowed to not sing in choir if she was having trouble, and if teachers ever took students outside while the weather was bad, she was allowed to opt out. She was in middle school when this happened, and all of the teachers got the memo except for the PE teacher. Not only did this female dog not believe that Jane had asthma, but she also didn't believe that asthma was real. She thought it was just something that kids come up with so they don't have to exercise. What? Alright, I've got to interject here, guys. Now, I would typically say that I cannot believe this, right? This seems unbelievable that a PE teacher, a qualified PE teacher, thinks that asthma isn't real. But maybe there genuinely are PE teachers out there that just love fitness and exercise so much to the extent that they think that any kid that says they have asthma is actually just making it up. So I guess I'm not saying that this woman necessarily thinks that asthma doesn't exist or hasn't been trained to know what asthma is, but maybe she just thinks it's an excuse that kids always use. Okay, let's get back to the story. This caused a few problems, and Jane had been sent to the principal's office more than once for trying to opt out of gym class. She wouldn't get in trouble, but being reprimanded in front of the entire class and getting sent to the office is mortifying for a middle schooler, and she was sick of it. Our story takes place in the middle of winter, just before winter break. We live in a cold climate, and our winters get wet and cold, neither of which are great for asthmatic lungs. On this day, the teacher had them running the mile, but instead of having them run laps in the gym, she insisted they go outside, and kids would get in trouble for taking their coats because they had to be in uniform. Jane tells the teacher she can't run outside in this weather, and the teacher tells her that if she refuses to run, then she'll be sent to the office. Now, if you remember, middle schoolers' sense of self-preservation is non-existent, and Jane has balls so big that they impair her walking, so she decided enough was enough. This school had a track that was 1/4 mile long, but for whatever reason, the teachers never had kids run the mile on it. Instead, they had the kids run around the block that the school was on twice, while the teacher stood at the starting point with a stopwatch. What Jane knew, and the teacher didn't, was that at the same time Jane had gym class, our mum would go to kindergarten to pick up our younger sister. She'd seen Jane running the mile on nice days earlier in the year, and gave her a little honk and a wave. So imagine, if you will, my mother, a CNA, going to pick up her baby, only to spot her eldest daughter running around outside with no coat on in the middle of winter, struggling not to slip on ice in certain spots. Mum was annoyed. She pulled up next to Jane to ask what the heck she was doing, and Jane told her through chattering teeth that the teacher was forcing her to run the mile outside with the other girls. Mum told Jane to get into the car and drove around to the front entrance to rush her into the office, demanding they call an ambulance and get her a nebulizer for a breathing treatment and something to warm her up and get her circulation back, as she was literally turning blue. Jane was hospitalized. The school had to pay for the ambulance ride, pay for the nebulizer medication, and pay for the hospital stay. Mum chewed out the principal and the teacher, then the doctor did the same. The teacher was suspended and put under review, but for whatever reason, she didn't get fired. However, she did learn not to ignore doctor's notes in kids' files, and there wasn't another incident like that in the 12 years it took for all of our siblings to finish middle school. And Jane continues to have the largest balls I've ever seen. Why is it always PE teachers, guys? That's my question. You just hear about them a lot. Everyone's had one bad PE teacher who just forces kids to do things that they don't want to do, just for no real reason. And I feel like I've seen at least 2 or 3 stories like this or similar to this over the years. Now, yes, not necessarily have they had this level of revenge, which was excellent to see. But, you know, on like Entitled Parents or Entitled People, you hear about teachers like this, PE teachers to be precise. It's pretty crazy that she wasn't fired, by the way. Like you've said at the end there that she did learn not to ignore doctor's notes in kids' files. Is that not the number one thing to like do as any teacher, is read those files and know exactly what is in them? Surely. Like, yes, the point is to educate, but first and foremost, it's to keep the child alive, isn't it? Like, when they're in your company, you are their carer. That's insane. But yeah, shout out Jane for saying, you know what, I'm done with this. I'm just not doing this again. And shout out to your mum as well. You've lost weight. You look great. Slight backstory. About 7 years ago, I was forcibly moved out by my father. And after my mother tried to guilt trip me into dropping the associated court case, we went no contact for a while. She and I are on good terms now, but it took a while for us to get comfortable meeting up again.
and this interaction occurred during our first meetup after that point. Because of how much this had affected my life, I'd been between jobs for a while and was severely struggling with the poverty of very abruptly having to fend for myself on top of the mental issues caused by the incident. Suffice to say, I was really struggling to have regular meals and was definitely not at 100%. It had been close to a year since she'd last seen me, and due to this intense poverty, I'd naturally lost close to 30 kilograms, 66 pounds since then. I was slightly overweight before and was now just slightly underweight. Don't worry, I wasn't skin and bones. Now, Mum was trying to be friendly, and I'm sure she did sincerely mean it as a compliment when she said, "You've lost weight, you look great," as she's also struggled with her weight a bit. However, I was still quite bitter and uncomfortable with seeing her again after the stance she took, and it wasn't exactly intentional weight loss. So I looked her in the eyes and said, "Thank you. It's from the malnutrition since I can't afford to eat properly." Guys, she went frickin' silent. I don't think she looked me in the eye for the rest of the meetup. I would never be so bluntly rude to her now since we're on good terms, but she really needed the reminder of how bad my life had become because of the incident. At least she bought me a F ton of groceries afterwards because of it, so I had some proper food again for a while. Yeah, I mean, that's a good thing, I guess, but she can't just like buy some groceries for you in the short term and that makes up for everything that's happened in the long term. I don't know what the incident was. Obviously, we don't know what forcibly moved out by your father means. But yeah, depending on the age this was or what happened, I mean, who knows if it's legal or not. But yeah, losing close to 30 kilograms by not being able to get, the sufficient food that you need, whether that's the quantity or quality, whatever, or other stuff, from the emotional abuse perhaps of what happened. 30 kilograms is nuts, given you were slightly overweight before. Wow. Like, it's not as if you were, 200 kg and lost 30 and you're still overweight. Yeah, mental. But I'm glad that she now probably realizes what has happened to you, but then surely she should have realized that anyway. Shouting, "I'm 15, you pedo," at every guy who harasses me on behalf of younger me. I just found this sub and wow, I love it. I thought I'd share something I've been doing for a few years, which I think this sub will appreciate. I used to get harassed as a young teen, a heck of a lot, because I dressed alt, and therefore men think you're not a person, but a walking goth sex doll. I also worked in the biggest alt market in my city, and we would get so many guys in there just to harass young girls or try to manipulate them. I would try to be a cool aunt figure to these girls and guide them, showing them self-defense, etc. But honestly, the problem seemed to be getting worse and worse. One day, after I'd had to deal with a 14-year-old crying on me because a stranger said he was gonna finish in her hair, I was walking home from work and some guy started shouting the exact same thing at me. Now, I'm pretty lucky in that I don't look much older than I did at 14 or 15. People already said I looked 18. And in that moment, I had a wonderful idea. I turned around and screamed, "I'm 15, you freaking pedo." The friend I was with got the memo and joined in screaming pedo at them. At that point, we'd been walking through the busiest square in the city. Pretty soon other people started paying attention to what we were screaming and joined in till there must have been 20 plus people shouting at the guy with easily 200 others staring. I've never seen someone poop it so quick. It was absolutely hilarious to see him go from feeling so big and powerful to so scared so quickly. He legged it off and dived into a taxi, clearly scared that if he stayed, an angry mob would form around him. It was brilliant. I still do it to this day when I get harassed, if there's enough people around for it to work, and some of my friends have joined in too. Hopefully before too long, the message will spread around them and they'll all become too scared to harass anyone. Well, you know what, OP? I actually think you're doing the right thing here. Yes, obviously they're not pedos because you're over the age of 18, but they don't know how old you are. So yeah, they're running away because they have no idea, and for all they know, you could be under the age of 18. And what if you were under the age of 18 but didn't say anything? It'd be terrible. So yeah, again, kind of like the first story, you've stopped this person from doing this again in the future. So yes, although you're telling a white lie, it's for the good of humanity. Have you ever sucked a D? There was a guy in my small animal care class back in high school who would always ask questions about my asexuality in a condescending tone. You know the ones. How do you know you're asexual if you've never had sex? Are you sure you just haven't met the one yet? How can you be dating, insert my partner's name here, without sex? So you're just fine with being a virgin forever? Almost every day while I sat with our class chickens, I was interviewed on what I do with my parts. His favourite of the questions was, how can you be so sure you're asexual if you haven't had sex? I tried to explain to him multiple times that I didn't need to have sex to know that I was asexual, that it's a thing you feel, or in our case, don't feel, like how someone would know how they felt about being with men versus women, or anyone in between. I used all the analogies I could think of, and he just wouldn't stop. One day, I had enough. Without thinking, I yelled, "Have you ever sucked a D, Mike?" I've never seen any person so shocked, like he'd just been told something that would forever change his trajectory of life. What? Have you ever had homosexual intercourse with a male? No. Well, then how can you be sure you're straight then? Huh, Mike? Stammering, he repeatedly insisted it was because he felt such a strong attraction to ladies that there was no possible way he could be gay. Every single time, though, I asked him again how he was so sure. Struggling not to laugh, my friend was trying to get me to lower my voice. Look, Mike, now the chickens are scared. You made me scare the chickens. Get back to me when you've sucked a D, Michael. Naturally, I got in trouble, but my teacher was chill and it was nothing more than a good scolding and a 2-week ban from sitting with the chickens. I honestly think I should have gotten in more trouble. I should have controlled my temper. Well, there's no going back in time, I guess. For the remaining 2 months that we shared class together, he never asked me how I could be so confidently asexual. Maybe he learned something that day. Maybe he was scared of incurring my wrath once again. We may never know. I still haven't gotten any word that he sucked a D yet, though. Alright, and here is some chicken tax up on screen right now. I don't think I've ever seen chicken tax before on Reddit, but I will say the chickens look pretty lovely. Especially like the white one. Is that racist? It wasn't meant to be, and it obviously isn't. But I just think the white one looks cute. Not that the black one doesn't. Could this stay in? Yes, because it's not racist. It's just unfortunate that I've said that. There we go, guys. I hope you don't take offense to that. It's just a joke. Well, it's not a joke. I mean it. I thought the white one looks cool. Anyway, yeah, let's just move on. And now for our final traumatized them backstory. Tell the entire class about my depression while I'm in the mental hospital. Hope you don't mind me emailing the entire staff about your AA meetings. I have severe clinical depression, and I've been struggling with it for years. The teachers are always made aware of my hospital admissions, so they can be more lenient on late work after I get back, which I've never really had a problem with. Now, there was this maths teacher I had, let's call her Mrs. R. My dad is a recovering alcoholic and goes to AA regularly, which I'm very proud of him for. When he went to a parent-teacher conference with her for the first time, he told me in the car that he remembered her from AA and was surprised she got a job since she relapsed constantly. Now, I didn't care much about it since everyone has their problems and just decided to forget about him saying it. Now, I had to be hospitalized due to an unalive attempt. It was for about 3 weeks, and during that time, I was doing math work to keep up with her class. When I came back, I realized that everyone acted very off when they talked to me. I was fairly confused, so I asked one of my friends what happened when I was gone. Apparently, a kid had openly asked why I was gone for most of the year, without any repercussions, and Mrs. R decided it was appropriate to go on a rant about how I was depressed and mentally ill, and that she hated how I was coddled by the school board. She also stated that if I was her child, she would beat the depression out of me. I was royally annoyed at the fact that she did that and thought it was a good thing to do to a kid that at that point was in middle school and was being bullied left and right. In a rage, I sent a mass email to the staff, stating that she was seen in AA and how uncomfortable I felt with an alcoholic teaching me stuff. Following this, she was terminated because not even the administration knew about her addiction and thought that it wasn't safe for her to be around children. Now, just want to make sure, OP, that you saying following this she was terminated, does that mean she was shot and killed? I hope it does. I fear it doesn't, but yeah, I feel like that is the only reasonable outcome here, is that she was shot on sight. Because the things that she's doing here are a disgrace, and yeah, it is kind of weird that her school wouldn't know about her alcoholism and her alcoholic past, but maybe she just hid it. I mean, that's, I'm sure, what happened, which is crazy to be an alcoholic that isn't recovered and is still, well, relapsing constantly, according to your dad. But yeah, having that person around children is crazy. Yeah, you did the right thing once again. To be honest, it doesn't really matter that she is an alcoholic or goes to AA meetings or relapses, whatever. Like, the fact that she's disclosing this to her class, your classmates, and then saying all this stuff that she said. Like, it is absolutely ridiculous. She hated how you were coddled by the school board, and that if you were her child, she would beat the depression out of you. That's absolutely insane. For that reason alone, she should obviously not be in education. Threaten my friend with revenge prawn. I'll ruin your whole dang life. My very good friend made some slightly dumb mistakes and sent some pictures to someone that she reasonably thought she could trust, but not knowing much more than his first name, his screen name, and roughly where he lived and the type of work he did. He is not in our country, but had indicated that he would be traveling for work to near us shortly, and they'd made some plans to meet. And when she got some red flags and backed out, the dude threatened to publish these pictures online. I am, incidentally, an attorney. So, some searching later and gathering up any pictures he sent her of him that could possibly identify him, his online handle led me to a TikTok page, which led me to an Instagram page with his name on it. That led to a LinkedIn page with his place of work that matched a picture he sent with a branded polo he was wearing. Some more searches got me the email of the CEO, the VP of HR, operations manager, and the public relations manager. I just fired off an email on behalf of my client of the screenshots of him threatening revenge prawn, snippets of the conversation showing that username while he sent that exact picture of him wearing his company's branded apparel, links to how I know it's him, along with pictures he sent her of his motorcycle with the license plate showing, as further proof that it is him. I also included screenshots of him discussing a workplace incident that were timestamped, along with pieces of dialogue discussing how he had sex with an ex at his place of work, and discussing plans to have sex with her in his office as well. I also included a picture he sent her showing his work laptop with his entire Outlook calendar, along with proprietary information, which he sent to prove he was busy, along with other pictures he took of his workplace with non-consenting employees. I further informed his employer that I will be forwarding all this information to law enforcement, and since he'd indicated that he'd be traveling to the US soon, we'll also forward this to the local office of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, as, since my client is a US citizen on US soil, these threats constituted a federal crime, so that should they continue with his employment and continue with their plans to send him to the United States for work, I will ensure, on behalf of my client, that federal law enforcement is waiting for him on arrival, which I will do as one of the assistant US attorneys for this region is a law school buddy of mine. Since I have his license plate, I know where he lives and will be contacting his local authorities tomorrow. You dumb mother effer, thinking you were hiding around anonymity, thinking you could threaten my friend? It took me 45 minutes to destroy your life. Okay, so I'm recording this on the 5th of April, 2024. What I've just read there was posted on the 4th of April in the morning. And there is an update to come, phenomenally, which was posted literally just a few hours ago at the time of recording this. Now, before we get into that, I just want to give my initial thoughts. Yeah, I mean, what else can you say really other than, F around and find out? If you're going to try something like this and you're not clever and you're leaving clues and hints as to who you really are, in the modern day with technology, it's really not that hard to do a little bit of digging. I mean, yes, you've got unlucky, I guess unlucky in air quotes here, that the person that you're doing this to has a friend who's a good lawyer. But I mean, anyone could do this. It's not that hard. If you're leaving clues like this, it's so easy to find who you are, where you live, who you work for, etc., etc. And you've just ruined your entire life. What for? For threatening something stupid like this? Really? Was it worth it? Obviously not. I mean, you deserve it. Absolutely, but you're just so dumb. Then again, he's probably not expecting this sort of level. I would love to see his face as he realizes this unravels. I mean, we're going to get into the update right now to see what happens next, but my word, imagine this. You send off a threat online, think nothing of it, think, oh, I'm so clever and anonymous here and I'm going to get what I want. And then the following happens. Let's get into the update. Okay, now let's get into the update of that one, posted just 22 hours ago at the time of recording. Like I said in the intro, this is a very fresh story. So, barely 12 hours later, this happened. Before I get into the update though, I want to clarify a few things from my original post, primarily about the contact of the employer and why. Some questioned its truthfulness. While the entire story is true, some details were omitted for various reasons. There was more she and I had in our possession that did positively identify this individual. So, would a lawyer contact his employer like some stated would not be done? Well, it depends. I did not do what I did on behalf of a client who retained me. I did it as a friend to help a friend. And as her friend, who was also a labour and employment law attorney, I knew exactly how to squeeze this. And here is the thing. I was absolutely aware from the onset that the revenge prom threat would go nowhere with his employer, even if I could clearly lay out how the person with this screen name was in fact this person who works at that company. All we had were screenshots. If it was just the revenge prom threat, any employer would go, well, thank you for bringing it to our attention, but even if we accept our employee uses this screen name and we neither confirm nor deny anyone of that name works here, we have no provenance on this. This is just an alleged screenshot of an alleged conversation that could be easily edited and manipulated. Please feel free to pursue this with local authorities, and rest assured, should we be asked to, we will cooperate fully with any law enforcement inquiry, but we have no further comment at this time. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. These days it's so easy to edit absolutely anything, and I guess that's why a company couldn't really use it. And I know that's what they would say, because that's exactly what I would say. An alleged screenshot of an alleged conversation that was allegedly sent under an alleged username that's allegedly one of our employees. Whatever, dude. Call the cops if you're worried about it. We'll answer them honestly if they come to us. So no, the issue wasn't the revenge prom threat. It was the picture of the contents of the work laptop, because that can't be faked. There's no way of her or me to create a false image of the actual proprietary information on his work computer unless he sent it. There is no way for me or her to have possession of images taken of his co-workers without their consent unless he sent them. The proof here wasn't that this person broke the law, it's that he sent pictures of company employees and property which would absolutely be verifiable by their IT department that yes, this absolutely is his laptop. That's what would get him fired. So I advised my friend not to block him, to sit back and wait and not respond to anything, but let him dig himself deeper. And respond he did. Oh, and one more update, he's been fired. So with now definitive proof that the individual in the online conversation is in fact this person, we'll forward it all to the local authorities in his country, along with his license plate number. They are more than capable of getting his home address. Well, OP, fair play to you. It's one thing me saying at the end of the first post, you know, it's easy to do this now, to track people down online. It's another thing doing it legally and making sure you know exactly what you're doing and then carrying out what you want to happen so well to, as you say, yeah, completely destroy this guy's life very fairly and very justly in just, what, 45 minutes. I don't really get why people need an extra explanation. I think you explained it perfectly at the start, OP. There are a few weird comments down below. Apparently people were confused. I wasn't confused. I think you explained it perfectly well. And yeah, it was just really well executed from start to finish. Definitely the most professional nuclear revenge that I've seen. Normally we get some crazy stuff that is either bordering on illegal or is just very illegal. This was nuclear because it absolutely destroyed someone's life, but it was so professionally and expertly done, it doesn't even feel nuclear, it just feels right. Okay, now let's move on to our next story of nuclear revenge. How about this for a title? Didn't really want to post on this account, but it's the only one that met the karma requirements. Not too much given away there. Let's go. Okay, bear with me, I'm dyslexic and struggle with writing. Me and my girlfriend moved up to a remote little town a year ago. It's so peaceful and amazing, best decision of our lives. We were looking at places to buy and we came across a house that was pretty bad. The foundation was collapsing, the roof was collapsing, there was a rodent problem, but it was on 10 acres or something close to that, a beautiful plot of land. My girlfriend falls in love with this place. It's $215,000. Yeah, not gonna go for something that's that bad. I work construction and I don't want to come home to then work again. Now, my girlfriend's friend, let's call her Patricia. Sounds like a female dog name. I never bothered trying to remember her real one. Offered to buy the place and then sell it to us later. Yeah, no. She said we'll talk about it, but I stand on a hard no, and then my girlfriend tells Patricia no. Patricia and her boyfriend, Mitch, that's his actual name. I don't care if he sees this. In fact, I hope they do. Wow, that is a rarity for someone on Reddit to say, no, that is his actual name. No fake namesake, and I hope you see this. Already bought the house, thinking we'd buy it from them for more than the 215k. But okay, cool. My girlfriend has her friend moving out here that she's known since she was 3. I told them that if they buy the materials and the tools, and I keep the tools when they're done, I'll do the work for them for no additional cost, because I lost all my tools when we moved. Now, this Mitch guy trashes all over me about how he works in finance and doesn't need any help. Okay, whatever. I tell him what he needs to work on first because there are major issues, but I get pooped on again. Okay, let's talk about my girlfriend now. So she has PTSD, BPD, and a couple of other things that I don't remember off the top of my head. She struggles to make friends, so this is a big deal for her. She is super excited. So when they get here, they don't visit her. They don't give any idea that they talk every day and every night, but then they get here and they block her on everything. It absolutely destroys her because she doesn't understand what she did wrong. Now, they were upset and were cussing her out because she apparently tricked them into buying the place. She didn't. I told them not to because I was never going to say yes. Now, fast forward a year or so. They're on Facebook complaining about all the issues that I pointed out were issues they'd need to fix. So this actual crackhead Mitch is cussing us out. Now, I am just tired of this at this point. So I call the city and pretty much rat them out. I say they have plumbing issues, electrical issues, the roof and the floor is caving in, support issues, rodent problem, all of which can get it condemned. So guess what happened? I made a complaint and got it condemned. Then I went to his place of work and filed a report with corporate about his drug issues because he's a financial advisor at a bank and I don't think he should be anywhere near anyone else's money. I hope they enjoy $215,000 worth of debt with no job and nowhere to stay because I'm done getting cussed out and having them drag my girlfriend's name through the mud because they thought they could jack up the price and sell it to us. Damn, what great friends they must be, trying to buy a house for you, but in reality just charge you more than the original price of the house. Terrible people. What I hope is that when the bank gets hold of this house, repossesses it, that they kind of, I don't know, look to resell it to somebody like you for less than the original price. I think what you then probably have to do is just knock it all down and start again. It sounds like there are so many issues here that aren't even worth bothering with. So maybe you'd have to do that and it probably would be a lot of work. If you can make it work and the price is not too expensive, it does sound like it's a beautiful property. And I feel like you've gone through enough now to warrant that level of extra effort if you can be bothered. But yeah, as for the story, just from what I've read, all I can say is that they're just terrible people. Imagine that, saying, oh, I can't wait to move to your town. It's going to be so fun. We're talking every night, like so excited to come down, spend loads of time together. And also, like, I'm doing you such a favor by buying this house for you. We'll be in it for a short time. Then look, we'll sell it to you for a cheaper price. Just we'll make sure it's ready for you and no one else gets it. Then just blocking them and saying, oh, actually, you can't have the house. And also, why did you force us to buy it? Great friends right there. Not going to pay me overtime? Think again. I was discussing this sub with a good friend, and he said, boy, have I got a story that will fit. Now, it wasn't his story, but his brother's, and I sat with him and got the details. Buckle up, it's a good one and a long one. Let's call him Bob. Bob has been fiddling with computers since he was a kid, and knows them pretty well. As with most IT people, he's moved from job to job. The employee he worked for was a service/distribution company, and there were 2 IT employees. The company was located in Ontario, Canada. About 3 years ago, Bob's employer decided to modernize their software. They had separate programs for dispatching, for inventory, for payroll and finances, and it was complicated moving information from one program to the other. They decided to get an ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning program, and Bob recommended one that he knew inside out from a previous employer. For those of you who don't know, an ERP program handles everything. Purchase orders, sales, inventory, personnel, vendors, customers, all of it. You can run a report and find out which customer has bought the most part ABC in the last year, which salesman has improved his numbers the most, which vendor has the fastest delivery time, which shipper packed the most orders. Everyone in the company used the ERP program, but it was very complicated, and they used the aspects of it that related to their position. For example, the receiver would accept a shipment, verify the quantity, confirm it was received, and the inventory stats would be available to the salespeople if they wanted to look up how many were on hand. The receiver didn't care what the price was, or who the vendor was, he just did his job. Now, Bob was run ragged during the implementation process, but he managed to train most of the employees on their aspects, and after a few months, everything was running fairly smoothly. Bob still got tickets for tweaks in the operation of the software and occasional hardware IT issues. Then the company decided to expand their footprint and was marketing into different time zones. That messed things up. Atlantic Canada is 90 minutes early, so if someone sent an email or an order at 8 AM their time, it would arrive at 6:30 AM Ontario time. Pacific Canada is 3 hours late, so an email sent at 3 PM Vancouver time would arrive at 6 PM. This stretched out the day, so many staff came in early and worked late. Bob would arrive at 8 a.m. and there'd be people that demanded his immediate assistance and were annoyed that he didn't respond instantly even though their request was submitted before his start time. Same with later in the day. His phone would ring at dinner time with people that wanted help right now. They decided to stagger his and his IT colleague's shift times. Bob would start at 6 a.m. and work until 2:30, and his colleague would start at 10:30 a.m. and work till 7. Bob's colleague had kids and refused the shift change. The employer insisted, the colleague quit. That meant that Bob was the only person in the IT department. The employer said they'd looked to hire a new IT guy, but they had trouble finding one that knew the ERP system, and they were offering well under a market value salary. Bob asked for a raise and was denied. Then he wanted overtime, and the employer told him that as an IT specialist, he was exempt from overtime laws in Ontario. Bob looked it up, and the employer was correct. This went on for some time, and he knew lots of IT people socially. They told him what the company was offering, and Bob knew that they wouldn't find another tech. Things went downhill from there. Bob would get chewed out if he missed a call or an email, no matter what time it came in. He had to train new hires in the ERP system, as well as take care of the hardware. He asked repeatedly for better compensation and was denied, so he planned to get a new job. Now, here is the revenge. Bob had access to the entirety of the ERP program. When a user signed in, the time was logged, and even if they didn't sign out, after 15 minutes it would log them out anyway. Everyone in the company was on salary, and many of them came in early and stayed late. Ontario labour laws states that even salaried workers are entitled to overtime after 44 hours a week, unless they were managers or supervisors. So Bob jumped into the program and ran a report for each employee that wasn't a manager, all the way back to when the ERP program was started. Then he reached out to an employment lawyer and got the okay to refer employees to him. Bob lined up another job, and after he left, every employee in the company got an email with an Excel sheet showing the hours they had put in past 44 hours a week. The subject line said, "You're legally entitled to overtime pay," and in the body of the email was the lawyer's name. The poop hit the fan. Almost every employee authorized the lawyer to negotiate with the company on their behalf, and the company had to pay a ton of money. All the company had to do was pay Bob for the extra work he put in. Instead, they had to pay almost everyone. Okay, great revenge, I'm not gonna lie, but my main takeaway from this, my main emotion, is just feeling bad for just all the employees in general to work for this horrible company. Bob, obviously, on the one hand, having to do not just 2 people's jobs, but more like, it seems like 5 or 6. I mean, those shift times are ridiculous, and he's the only one that knows how this all works. That is such a specialized role that he's not even being paid for properly at all. I mean, it's not even close, it sounds like. And then, all the other employees who were doing overtime but then haven't been getting paid for it. What if Bob had never done this? They would have just done all those hours and never been given the money for them? It's ridiculous. So yeah, I mean, shout out Bob for helping out so many employees that were just being completely manipulated and just not given what they deserved. It's just sad that it had to come to that. Crazy. Pay the man the money he's worth for his skill, and this would never ever have happened. But then again, you could also say just pay the employees what they deserve and are owed for the overtime, and they'll probably be more happy as well, and it would just, you know, contribute to a much better working environment, and the company would probably do way better because of it. I don't know. It's just a weird one. I feel like it's backwards policy from a company like this, just trying to, you know, scrimp and save money, when in reality you're expanding, you're clearly doing well. Pay your staff more and they'll pay it back to you in terms of output, and yeah, the company will just do better. I don't know. It's just weird business practice, isn't it, really? But great revenge nonetheless. I ruined my ex-boyfriend's life 20 plus years ago, and I just made sure it stayed ruined. When I was in college in the 90s, I met Jake, then a 23-year-old man, through mutual friends. He had already graduated and was planning to move to the opposite side of the United States for grad school, and I'd already been making plans to move with friends only a 90-minute drive away from where he was moving to. We had so much in common, fell in love, and it really seemed like fate, both planning to move 3,000 miles and landing so close together. He had 2 sisters and a younger brother who were all awesome people, and I became instant friends with them as well. Because he was in school and I was working, I would usually go to him to hang out on the weekends. He was renting a house with 2 roommates also in his program. We were young, so money was tight, but we had fun, went for taco dates, and spent a lot of time at his house where he was breeding and selling small animals. Jake was an animal sciences PhD student, so being around animals was normal and I loved it. I met and became friends with his advisor's wife, Mary, who was in her mid-50s, who worked in administration at the university. She is a lovely woman. I'd often have lunch with her when I went over on the weekends. Jake was a teaching assistant, and I met other people in the program and made friends with them faster than he did. After about 2 years of dating, I was at the house one day, laying in bed together, in a state of some undress, and he said, out of the blue, he was concerned I'd been gaining weight and it made it harder for him to be attracted to me. No concern about my health, it was all about him finding me unattractive. I sat up and said, well, then maybe you should make sure there's better food for me to eat than crackers and cheese when I come up on weekends. Even at 23, I didn't take that kind of BS. I had gained maybe 10 pounds since meeting him 2 years earlier and still wore the same size clothes, about a US size 6 to 8. I wasn't going to engage in a fight about it after all. It was his problem, not mine, so I asked him calmly, what is your solution to this? He stared at me blankly and said, well, I guess that you should try to lose weight. And I said, nah, I'm not going to do that, so what are you going to do about it? He said, well, I guess nothing. I wanted to let you know how I feel. And I said, cool, thank you. Put my clothes back on, went to sleep, and drove home the next day as usual. We keep dating, and about 3 months later, he called me and said he wanted to break up after close to 3 years. The reason, and I quote, you don't know enough about science. He felt like he couldn't have a conversation with me about his work where he didn't have to use common names for animals instead of scientific ones. I said, well, that's bull. What's the real reason? He said it was the real reason. He came to see me a month later to return something of mine, and I confronted him, demanding the real reason. He finally admitted that he'd been seeing one of his undergrad students, let's call her Meg, a 19-year-old. He was then 26 and her teacher. I screamed at him to leave. My roommate threatened to throw him off our second floor balcony if he didn't go, and he left. It hit me all at once after he walked out, and I went from rage to stunned laughter. I'd actually met Meg a few times, and at one point, she was at his house for a barbecue and spilled something all over her pants. Jake asked me if I could loan her some sweats. Now I couldn't because I was a size 8, and she was a size 18. There's nothing wrong with that at all, but the point is, I realized he made those comments about my weight to try and get me to break up with him because he was a coward. He clearly liked a big girl. Although, when he said those things to me about my weight, it was 1 a.m. I lived about 95 miles away and we just had sex, so I don't know how he thought that would go. Even in hindsight, it perplexes me. Did he think I was going to break up with him and storm off into the night and drive for an hour and a half? Anyway, I emailed his roommates. It was the early 2000s. It's how you communicated anything you didn't want to say on the phone. I wanted to let them know that we'd broken up, and they were always lovely to me, and I thanked them for being friends. They both admitted, though, that they knew about Meg and were the ones to demand that Jake tell me, or they would. That is when he broke up with me with the lame, you don't understand science excuse. One of his roommates, a super nice, super cute guy named George, offered to help me get a few things still at their house that he collected for me away from around the house. He suggested I come up for the weekend. We go out and drink, have a good time, all the things that Jake didn't want to waste money on, and I said, sure. So I went up and George let me into the house while Jake was gone. I took photos of all of his animals because while I might not be a PhD student, I paid attention and I knew he had an endangered species in his care. He wasn't breeding it, it was an unreleasable animal that he'd taken in from a rescue organisation. There was paperwork he had to submit with a $25 fee, and he refused to do it, saying he didn't want the government in his business. I took photos of that animal, all his breeding conditions, and a photo of an animal not allowed in the state, which was in a tank right next to a window and visible from outside. I then went out for a night on the town with George. We stumbled in early, around midnight, so Jake and Meg, who were watching TV, would see me in a short dress, drunk, and George practically carrying me. I spent the night in George's room. He was a total gentleman, but made sure to leave the room and parade past them in his boxers a few times, and we giggled and moaned loudly so they could hear us. When I went to leave the next morning, Jake said I didn't have to act like a whore in front of him as I ate a donut slowly in my rumpled dress with messy hair, while George beamed at me and then planted a kiss on my forehead. Meg looked ashamed, not quite knowing where to look, and I said, have fun with my leftovers, and walked out. I wanted to think that the petty, loud hookup and a few juvenile insults was my revenge. It was not. The next day, I had my photos developed. The good old days. And I called the State Office of Fish and Wildlife. I reported the animals in the house, the potential overcrowding of breeding animals, and the 2 animals he shouldn't legally have at all in the state, and I asked them how to make a report. Well, it turns out that Jake wasn't well liked by his peers in his program, or by his roommates. But I was. George had suggested that he and their other roommate could submit complaints to the university that a TA was sleeping with one of his students and showing her favoritism. The night we were out at the bars, we made sure to tell the story to anyone who they knew. They made sure all the women in his classes knew he was sleeping with Meg. It wasn't a large program. People knew fast that he cheated and was now dating a student. George and the other roommate made sure people knew they had put in complaints. They were sick of Jake's entitled BS. With my full statement made and photos sent to the state wildlife officials, I called my friend Mary, Jake's advisor's wife. She knew about the breakup and the lame reason, and I let her know that he admitted he was sleeping with a student. I'd been emailing with him and he admitted to it in writing, so I sent that to Mary. To say she was not happy about that was an understatement. She said she made sure it would be investigated and told her husband, Jake's direct advisor, while I was on the phone with her. Speaking of investigations, a few weeks later, George called me, giddy, to say that state fish and wildlife officials were there confiscating the animals. He told them he'd be happy to tell them whatever they needed to know. Meg was there when it happened and told the officials that as far as she knew, all the animals belonged to her boyfriend Jake and that they were all legal. That put George and the other roommate in the clear. One animal was kept in the backyard, so it was implied to Jake that a neighbour reported it. While they were there to investigate, they knew to look in the back window to see the far more problematic, illegal to have in the state under nearly any circumstances, animal. Since George was on the lease, he was able to let them in to investigate in the house. The animals were all in communal areas, and the officers stayed there for a few hours and returned with a warrant to take all the animals and enter Jake's room to investigate. George and the other roommate let them into their rooms with no issues, and they were quickly cleared. Meg apparently couldn't get a hold of Jake, and eventually drove to the university to find him. Remember, no cell phones yet. It was a good day. The only animals they left were some guppies in a fish tank. Now, PhD students need grant money to do research, and a large part of animal studies funding comes from the federal government. Jake had just gotten an EPA grant right around when he broke up with me. So I called the EPA and asked how I would report that a person with a federal grant was being investigated for illegally harboring endangered animals. Long story short, he lost his EPA grant and had to make restitution on what had already been used, close to $30,000. He would never be able to get another federal grant. He avoided jail time on the state charges since all the animals were in good health, but lost all his breeding animals, worth thousands of dollars, since they were collected for safekeeping during the investigation when the 2 illegal animals were taken. In the end, he owed a $15,000 fine and the 2 animals went to a nearby nature centre. For years, I would stop by if I was in the area to visit them. The university revoked his scholarship and fired him from teaching for having an inappropriate relationship with a student. He somehow escaped being expelled, but it always shocked me that he never tried to hide the relationship with Meg and was so stupidly self-assured that he didn't even wait the 4 weeks until she would have been done with his class to start publicly dating her. By the university rules, he would have then been in the clear to date her, not being her teacher anymore, and she would just have to avoid any classes he was a TA in. It never fails to make me laugh. After a few months, I emailed his sisters and told them I missed them because Jake broke up with me after trying to call me fat and cheating on me, and I felt weird contacting them. The girls told me that he told the family I broke up with him because of the distance. I forwarded them emails that Jake wrote after the breakup, talking about how he fell for Meg and he was sorry about it, but it was true. I couldn't keep up with him academically, and it made him attracted to Meg. Jake managed to convince his dad to pay for 1 more year of school so that he could get a master's instead of a PhD. And while I stayed in contact with his sisters and brother via email and then social media, I largely let it all go. I got even, I made some friends, Mary became like an auntie to me, and I went on with life. I went on to get a master's degree myself, and my speciality, helping scientists and doctors communicate their work to lay people. You know, us dummies who can't remember all the scientific names. I swear, it happened by accident, not design, but I love it. and I work with everyone from small town doctors and nurses to pharmaceutical companies to museums to state and federal governments to film and TV producers. I travel a lot and speak and get to learn a lot of cool things about our planet and how things work. That is amazing. I knew through his siblings that Jake and Meg got married and had 2 kids. Meg dropped out of the sciences and became an accountant. Jake went back to breeding animals. Every once in a while, his sisters or brother would tell me something over a lunch or via text, but we had our own relationship that exists outside of him. Apparently, when I sent a wedding gift for one of his sisters, he loudly complained at a co-ed bridal shower that all of his siblings still were my friend and didn't make an effort to embrace his now wife, Meg. Apparently, the sister just laughed and said, "I don't make it a habit to be friends with homewreckers." This is how Jake's parents found out how their relationship started and ours ended, truthfully, 10 years after we broke up. Jake never found out I was behind reporting him to the state, and in the end, I didn't lie about a single thing, except maybe exaggerating a drunken makeout session with George, who is now a successful and tenured professor with a lovely wife and daughters. Now, fast forward about 20 years to a few weeks ago. I was at a university giving a lecture to a room of 250 undergrad and grad students. In the end, I was mingling with the students afterwards, and I hear a voice say, "Hey, OP, long time no see," and I realize it's Jake. And my facial expression did not change at all. I was completely shocked, but my instinct was to play dumb. So I said, "I'm sorry, help me out. Have we met at another workshop or lecture?" He looked incredulous and said, "It's me, Jake." And I said, "I can't place you, but I'd love to figure it out." Finally, I gasped and said, "Oh my goodness, Jake, I guess I blocked you out." And I said, "Well, lovely to see you." And I moved on quickly when he tried to reach out and hug me. I was happy to leave it there, with the satisfaction of him seeing me as a guest lecturer in a science department of a major university when he was just in the audience. The department chair and faculty who'd invited me to speak took me out to dinner, and while there, one of them said, "So, you know Jake?" I said I did from over 20 years ago, being vague about how. She went on to tell me that he had been there for an interview for a teaching position and had spent a few days there observing, and they were likely going to hire him. I couldn't control it. I scoffed. When they all looked at me, I said, "I'm sorry. I'm just shocked that he's teaching after what happened back at university." They said, "What happened?" And I said, "Well, he was sleeping with a 19-year-old student when he was 26, and he had to leave the program without a PhD because he couldn't afford to stay after losing his scholarship." The 3 people I was with all looked at each other like they knew they had a problem and said, "Wow, we'll have to look into that," and changed the subject. My old friend Mary, retired a year or 2 now but still friendly with her old colleagues, called me this weekend to say a friend at the university let her know that someone had called doing a background check about Jake, and they pulled his file, which included being fired, leaving the program with a lower degree, and the complaint letters from over 20 years ago about his conduct. Mary's name had been on it, with her husband listed as the faculty advisor, so she thought that she'd like to know. As a bonus, it had a copy of his arrest record for the illegal animals. I guess his dad had paid for a decent lawyer to get the record expunged after the charges were reduced, and he paid the fines so it doesn't show up on a standard background check. I don't think he's going to get that job. So, I will return to my life, content that the universe comes through sometimes, especially if you give it a little nudge just now and then. The best revenge is when you don't have to do anything wrong, you just have to help direct knowledge to the right places. If there is anything I can impart to any young women and men reading this, as I shimmy happily into my now size 10 pants, it's that if someone who is supposed to love you complains about your weight or looks, that is their problem to fix mentally, not yours. And maybe it's time to check out what they are doing behind your back, or simply move on. Remember though, it's their flaw, not yours. If Jake hadn't been a coward and tried to make me break up with him and just ended things with me in a mature way, I might not have found out about Meg and turned his own wickedness back on himself. Okay, and there we go. That is the end of that one. Wow. First thing I've got to say is fantastic revenge. Very much justified. There is absolutely no way this guy should ever be allowed to work in any form of education again. He completely ruined that chance by having a relationship as a TA with one of the students. That is my immediate conclusion from that, and I'm very happy, to be fair, that you've made sure and you continue to ensure that won't happen. Now, the next point is, and I want to ask your thoughts on this, guys. Do you think that this guy, Jake, should still be getting punished 20 years later for mistakes that he made 20 years ago. Do you think that's a little bit too long? I mean, do we still punish him 80 years later for these mistakes? Are you allowed to make mistakes and, be punished for them? Sure. But ultimately, I'm playing devil's advocate here slightly, but he's done nothing illegal, yet his life is still being ruined 20 years later. Is that not a little bit harsh, or is that justice for what he did? I mean, we don't know the effect that it had on the 19-year-old. Clearly, he's abused that level of power there, and who knows what effect it's had on the girl. But you get what I'm saying? 20 years later, still getting punished for something he did when he was half his age? I don't know. Seems perhaps a little bit harsh, but I think it's potentially fair. I also do think that OP, let's just make sure that she definitely has moved on and it's not still kind of trauma in her mind. Yes, it's great to make sure that someone has the revenge they deserve, but 20 years of this, not saying that she's done loads and it's always on her mind. Just I want to make sure that she has moved on with her life. I feel like by the end we're getting towards that stage, but I don't want it to be an ongoing thing for the rest of her life. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's just a little bit too much for it to still be going on now. I think now's the time to leave it. Or do we carry on and just ruin this guy's life forever? Give me some real actual answers in the comments. Not just, oh, he did a terrible thing, he deserves for his entire life to be ruined for 80 years and then die. Let's be realistic, okay? I want to hear some actual logic and some cohesive thoughts, which to be fair, you guys always give me. There's no need for me to say that, but you get what I'm saying. I mean, you could also say that, the revenge was at the time good. You told the correct authorities, the school, the whatever it's called, fish and animal people, the people that deal with the animals, about what was going on. They came and dealt with it. That was it. And again, I have to maintain, he should not work in a school again. But outside of that, I don't know if he still deserves to be getting punished. Maybe he does. I'm not completely decided, to be honest. I actually reckon he probably does. But it is just harsh. But, if you are the sort of person that would do this, yeah, maybe you do deserve to be punished forever. I don't know. People in the comments are saying that ultimately what he did was cheat on you in the 90s with a woman over the age of consent, over the legal age. So it's a bad move, but it's not a crime. Now, does he deserve to be punished 20 years later? Even if he was the TA. People are saying that, what you did with George, OP, was fantastic, and I agree, that was brilliant. No doubt about that. And maybe even staying friends with the family is fine as well, although, to be fair, a little bit weird 20 years later. But yeah, devastating the dude's entire life, ruining his career, continuing to do damage for decades afterwards. After he's worked his way back up from nothing, and it seems as if he's trying to live a proper life, and he's still not doing that well, right? I mean, he's applying for jobs that he probably should be, a level ahead of by his 40s, and I don't know, maybe it's just a little bit too much. Again, maybe I'm just waffling here. Let me know in the comments down below. You guys are the voice of reason on this channel, not me. Got rude guy arrested for suspended license. In the mid-2000s, my friends and I would frequent a small billiards place in a neighboring town where you could rent a table by the hour or play per game. We'd play a few games, watch whatever sports were on TV, and have casual conversations. There were no problems and no drama until about 3 months of us visiting this place. A guy shows up and takes our spot at the billiards table. No big deal, we were all chatting anyway. 20 minutes later, my friend lets him know that we want to play the next game, but this jerk is super dismissive. Needless to say, we didn't get in during the next game, so I politely let him know we wanted to play next. Another lady chimed in that she wanted the game after us. The guy blatantly ignored me and the other woman. Some more time goes by and the guy leaves the table. We see our chance to get in. We put the quarters in and the balls are dispensed, except the green 6 ball. The guy took it to the bathroom with him. At this point, it was ridiculous and we notified the manager. The manager noted it was 12:30 and they were going to be calling last call and closing, so we didn't want to make a scene by kicking him out. He gets us another ball so that we can play. The guy comes out of the bathroom and knows that we realised what he did. He smirks and proceeds to the patio to have a cigarette, bringing along his beer and the green billiard ball. The guy comes back in and tossed the ball he was holding onto the table, hitting a few balls on it and messing up our game. He goes up to the bar just in time for last call. One of the friends I was with suggested we follow him home and each call the highway patrol to report a suspected drunk driver. 3 of 4 of us agree. So when he leaves, we used our trusty Nextel push-to-talk phones and coordinated several calls to the police. We provided details like license plate, vehicle make and model and colour, and mentioned the car nearly hit another vehicle, was swerving between lines and driving erratically. This was under a 15-minute plan. We had no idea where the guy lived, but suspected it was close as he was visiting a neighborhood place, so our time was limited. The one guy who didn't notify the police tailed the jerk and called us giddy when a police officer pulled between him and the guy and turned on his lights to pull him over. The police blotter that week included an arrest of a guy who was pulled over after multiple calls of erratic driving. He wasn't arrested for DWI, but instead for driving on a suspended license. Well, there we go. Dealt with phenomenally well. I'm actually quite interested to know how this guy wasn't done for drink driving. Maybe he did just have a couple of drinks and that was all. But still, I'm not sure I'd necessarily advocate that, even though it's within the limit, just about. But yeah, good to see that you guys got some justice, because what kind of guy does this? I mean, seriously. Like, fair enough if you want to play an extra game. I mean, is that even fair? I'm not sure. You know, if you want to play 2 games and you say to people, listen, I know that you're waiting, but I really just want to play another game. No, I mean, even then, you should just give the table up. Sorry, you should. But then what he did after that, taking the green ball to the toilet. I mean, what? I've never heard of someone doing that. And then ruining the game, the next game, by chucking it on the table just for the sake of it. Why? I think he deserves to be arrested just for that pettiness and just being a jerk in general. Good revenge. A lawyer's pro-revenge on a landlord. Landlords are jerks, generally speaking. Everyone knows that. But if you think residential landlords are bad, they are nothing compared to commercial landlords. Landlords of commercial buildings are some of the cruelest, nastiest people I've ever come across. This revenge tale is about a commercial landlord and how I dealt with him. Back in the 90s, sometimes I'd go for lunch at this restaurant in the basement of our building. The place was called The Vault because it had a massive bank vault that had always been there, dating back to the days before the place was turned into a restaurant. The vault was so huge that they could see a couple of tables in there, and you could eat dinner surrounded by rows of old, gleaming safe deposit boxes. One day I was there for lunch and the owner took me aside. "The landlord's driving me nuts," he said. "The landlord drives everyone nuts." I was a subtenant in the same building, sharing space with an old lawyer, Aaron, and the landlord was always causing us trouble. I'd already had a few run-ins with him and we hated each other on site. In most jurisdictions, commercial landlords don't need court orders to get you out. Instead, they just change the locks and you find out about it when you show up and your key doesn't work. Every time our landlord had a dispute with anyone, which was often, he'd always threaten to change the locks. He keeps demanding all this stuff for extra rent, and it's really weird because a lot of it's really old. The restaurant owner showed me a letter the landlord had served on him earlier that day. I looked over the demand and read a list of expenses for snow removal and parking lot repair and common area flooring and all kinds of trash going back years. I read it all the way to the end, and there it was. The usual clause saying he was going to change the locks if the tenant didn't pay this and do that. From the wording of the demand, it looks like you've been fighting a while. Why did you wait before consulting a lawyer? I asked one of the lawyers I know and he said it's hopeless. He told me the lawyer's name. It was a guy I knew with a trashy real estate practice who'd resorted to taking little legal aid cases to keep the lights on when the market tanked in '89. "Did you do something to make the landlord hate you?" I asked. Because this is a bit over the top, even for our jerk landlord. "He knows I'm moving the restaurant. I think he's trying to grab as much money as possible before I go. Plus, he's giving me grief over the vault." "He won't let you take it with you?" "Are you kidding? It weighs almost 100 tons and I don't need it. But the lease says I have to remove it and that I also have to restore the building to what it was before there was a vault. That would cost a fortune. The jerk landlord says if I leave the vault behind when I move, he'll sue." "Send your lease up to my office and let me look it over," I said. I finished my lunch and when I got back to my office, the lease was waiting for me. It was just as bad as the restaurant owner said. The lease was a renewal of a renewal of an assignment of a renewal, the original documents dating back to shortly after World War II when a bank first leased the place and the vault was installed. Somehow, the landlord had suckered the restaurant into taking over a lease that left him liable to remove a bank vault at the end of the term. That is crazy. No big deal, I thought. The restaurant can default and all the landlord can do is sue a shell company. But when I got to the last page of the lease, there was a guarantee clause. The restaurant owner had personally guaranteed the lease and he was on the hook for removing a vault weighing 100 tons and then fixing the place up. It would cost a fortune. To be fair, moral of the story so far is you've got to read the contract in full for anything like this because, wow, being personally liable for a 100-ton vault is crazy. The case was hopeless, of course. That was obvious right away. But then I thought about the jerk landlord with his demands and his threats and his rent hikes, and I asked my brain to do me a solid, which it promptly did. I picked up the phone and called the restaurant owner. I'm screwed, right? You're calling me to say there's no way out. That's what my commercial lawyer already said, but I just thought I'd ask. Well, I can save you, but it's going to cost. How much? 5,000 in legals and another G note for the agent. Agent? What kind of agent? Real estate. Send up a check, certified, and leave the rest to me. The check hit my desk in less than an hour. I went to Aaron's office. I need a real estate agent, I said. You buying a house? Nope. Selling a house? Nope. By this point, I'd been sharing space with Aaron for almost 5 years, and he knew me pretty well. You pulling one of your stunts again? He asked. Yep, but nothing that will get you into trouble. Alright, I know a guy. Aaron knew all kinds of guys, and that's one of the reasons he eventually got disbarred. But he knew a guy, and he gave me the agent's name and number, and the next day I paid the agent a visit. I told him what I needed, and we agreed to terms. I gave him some papers and the cash for his fee. A few days later, I was again at the vault for lunch. The owner saw me walk in and greeted me himself. The landlord's here, he said. Why? For lunch, and to be a jerk. Let's sit in the vault room so I don't have to look at his face. He took me to the vault room, and with the door almost completely closed, we had a consultation while we ate pasta and drank red wine. That's pretty elite, by the way, I've got to say. Imagine that. Sitting in a vault, having pasta, drinking red wine. That's like movie scene right there, but I guess the circumstances aren't great, to be honest. So I said, we're making demand on the landlord, munching on spaghetti carbonara. Demand? What are we demanding? I pulled a document out of my briefcase and passed it to him while I sipped my wine. We're demanding that the jerk landlord release all the restaurant equipment, all the fixtures, the ovens, the freezers, the ventilation, everything you need to run a restaurant. The lease exempts all that stuff. He can't stop me taking what I want. The only thing that matters is the vault, and of course, I don't want that. But I shook my head. You need the vault, I said. And we're demanding that he release the bank vault as well. We're insisting that he let you take it out within 7 business days. You think you can beat the landlord with reverse psychology? You think if you treat him like a 2-year-old, you can manipulate him into doing what you want? Well, we'll find out soon enough. He's had the demand for a couple of days now. The restaurant owner dropped his wine glass and it shattered on the marble floor. You already gave it to him, he said. He got up, swung open the vault door, and called for the waiter to clean up the mess. Let's see what the landlord has to say, I told him, and we walked over to the landlord's table. The landlord was a big, beefy man with a big appetite. He sat alone, eating wolfishly and with his hands. My client needs an answer today, I said. The landlord looked up at me as he chewed noisily. I'm the vault's lawyer, I said. I gave you a demand the other day. My client needs an answer right now. He needs the vault for a new place, and he's got to make arrangements. Your client could forget about the bank vault, he said, wiping his massive greasy hands on an already soiled napkin. But you can't do that, I said. My shock was feigned, but the restaurant owner's jaw dropped for real. The landlord laughed at us. I'm the landlord. I can do what I want. I'm going to need that in writing because my client might sue, I said. Sue all you like, the landlord told me. Sue till you're blue in the face. He told me that I'd have a formal response by the day's end, and then he told me to go away and let him finish his lunch. When the letter arrived from the landlord, claiming ownership over the bank vault, I brought it downstairs and showed it to my client. How the heck did you do that? Trade secret, I said. The following month, the restaurant moved out and the place was empty, and that was too bad because I'd always liked eating at the vault. Now the restaurant was in a new location 20 minutes away. They called the new place the Vault, and they'd preserved the vibe of the old place. It was very similar, except they didn't have the bank vault. The bank vault, all 100 tons of it, was where it had always been, in the basement of the building where I rented space. I showed up for work a little after that, and Aaron collared me. The landlord's looking for you, he said. Oh yeah? What about? He's really angry. He said his deal fell through. Deal? He was supposed to rent the place downstairs to a new tenant, a bank or a credit union or something like that. They were supposed to come in to sign a lease, but they didn't show up. And what's that got to do with me? I said to Aaron. And I said the same thing again to the landlord when he managed to track me down a couple of days later. I know you were behind this, he said, his jowls quivering. I know it was you. That offer from the agent, it was all BS. Just a trick to make me keep the vault so that your client could sneak out of the place and leave that freaking bank vault behind. I'm gonna sue. if you're looking for counsel, I think I'm going to have to declare a conflict. I'm going to sue the restaurant and the agent, and I'm going to sue you. He stormed off. But the landlord didn't sue. Of course he didn't. He didn't have a contract to sue on, only a vague letter of intent that I drafted, enough to hook a greedy landlord who was used to having his way. The offer he'd received was non-binding, incapable of acceptance without the signing of a formal lease, which of course never got signed. When I left Aaron's place a year later, the downstairs was still unoccupied, with a sad for rent sign sitting in the window, starting to look faded. So there we go. That is without a doubt one of the best revenge stories I've read in a long time. That was brilliant from beginning to end. What might have been potentially a kind of boring topic, you know, landlords and contracts and that sort of stuff, maybe not the most entertaining, so well written and really good. This guy clearly is just a horrible, greedy man that, yeah, any sort of idea of, oh, can I make some more money from a new bank potentially coming in? He was all for it, not even checking if they were even a real bank in the first place or doing any sort of due diligence there and working out what was going on. Doesn't really surprise me when he's just as selfish as this, forcing somebody to take a 100-ton vault with them or he'll sue. I mean, just absolutely ridiculous. I guess this comes down to you have to leave the property in the same way it was when you first got it. But I don't know how anyone would realistically know that, first of all, there was a huge 100-ton vault. And then secondly, that you had to get rid of it when you left, because when you moved in, it was there, right? But again, as was explained in this one, going back to the Second World War and having a contract carryover from there is extremely petty. I do kind of stand by what I said, though. I do think with all these things, you've got to read literally, I was going to say word for word, but almost letter for letter. Like the punctuation even is extremely important in these sort of contracts to make sure you're not getting absolutely shafted like this guy did. But yeah, if it wasn't for you, OP, I mean, that would have been terrible. But thank goodness that people like you exist and just exploited the guy that was exploiting this unlucky individual.